Sorry about the delay, but we were waiting on a couple of council members to come in. So Ms. Honeycutt said we can get started without her. She's en route. So we move to item number 1 of our Finance Committee agenda, which all members of council participate. Item 1A, allocation of U.S. Treasury ARPA funds for critical home repairs program and design. There's a presentation, I believe.
Chairman Pryor, items 1A, 1B, and 1C, your community development staff. We have 2 representatives here that will present the plans for both of these new initiatives. Each presentation will be just a few minutes to give you the overview of what's in the yellow sheet.
All right, so what I would like to do is when they get done with 1A, let us pause and take a vote on 1A so nobody can get confused.
Okay.
And then we'll pause and take a vote on B, C, and D. They
D
can do
is
the
not ours.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, 1 through C.
Perfect.
And then we can do it like that, so all right, 1A, the presentation.
Yes. Gail Carson will be presenting to you all about this new initiative based on Mr. Darby's recommendation to set aside $3 million for critical repair.
Okay.
Ma'am. If we need to ask for more, we can come back, correct? Yes, sir. All right, thank you, ma'am.
That's the write-up on this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So at a meeting of County Council held on May 10th, Council voted to allocate $3 million from ARPA funds for emergency housing repairs. Council stipulated that no funds would be allocated until the project guidelines were developed and the plan presented to Council for approval. Tonight, I'm providing a brief overview of the plan, our vision for the critical home repair program for the elderly citizens. The entire plan has been submitted as a yellow sheet attachment. Critical home repair program, target population that we're proposing are seniors, 62 and older, low to moderate income, with serving homeowners, current occupants, and/or occupants with heirs property ownership interests. Community service has found a way to establish ownership interests when there are heirs property issues involved. Typical repairs could consist of roofs that are leaking, floors with compromised structural integrity, bathroom modifications, and ramps to accommodate diminished mobility and ensure handicap accessibility. We have proposed a cap of $30,000 per repair. Exceptions to the cap require department head or DCA approval. Phase 1, the first 2 phases, we believe we can implement immediately upon council approval using existing resources. We've identified 3 agencies that are current grant partners: Operation Home, HomeWorks, and Home Dreams. These 3 agencies are very experienced in managing repairs. They're very experienced in overseeing the construction project management and understanding building services requirements for permitting and inspections. These 3 agencies applied for HUD funds. Our HUD funds were limited and we could not fully fund their request. The $208,760 would bring them up to their full request. Under phase 1, we would hire an additional staff person who would assist with applications and certification. They would provide outreach to citizens and serve as boots on the ground, actually going out and making sure that citizens who need the service are approached and that the referrals are processed. The 3 agencies also have wait lists, but we would accept new referrals. We actually have been receiving phone calls from citizens asking us about this program. So the word is out that there's something happening and we're receiving phone calls. Under phase 2, this would be to conduct energy audits to promote healthy homes. We have a grant partner that we're familiar with, the Sustainability Institute. They conduct energy audits. They determine whether the home needs to be insulated, whether there's a weatherization need. They seal air leaks, and they minimize potential for infestation. But most importantly, in doing those things, they reduce the heating costs and the cooling costs, which at this point is costing all citizens a considerable amount of money. we look at the per home weatherization installation cap of being $12,000. Not every home will require all of those services. They conduct an energy audit to determine what level of insulation, weatherization, and leak seal is required. Phase 3, this is a bit more involved. It would require us building capacity. The 3 agencies involved in Phase 1 could not handle all the needs, so we would want to expand the pool of critical home repair grant partners through a brief RFQ process. We'd want to expand the pool of construction repair contractors, encourage and promote grant partners contracting with those small firms. We'd be working with the procurement department to look at their list of small firms. And finally, we want to hire the FTE to provide the outreach to citizens, going out to the communities that are not yet being served, work with grant partners, and help to increase our list of contractors to complete the repairs. So tonight, our request is to approve the funding for the critical home repair plan, allocate $208,760 to the 3 grant partners, approve an additional $300,000 to fund the cost associated with project operations, administration, and oversight, which includes hiring FTE, the boots on the ground. But more importantly, we know we want to build capacity of young, new, small firms. That might involve training, helping them to build their skills so they can be competitive and increase their capacity.
All right, that's 1A. Any questions from council members?
Mr. Pryor, I would be remiss, there's an organization, in terms of a contract partner, which is duly qualified to assist, and I'd like to know what procedures would I go to Mr. Rand to have this group included?
What's the name of it?
It's called the Liberty Hill Redevelopment Group.
Mr. Darby, based on what we have here, they would fit nicely in Phase 3, and that could be a contract that we could issue under Phase 3 pending verification that they can do the work that it sounds like they're able to do. We want that. We need new organizations because we don't have enough to do the work and we don't have enough contractors to do the work. So
Right.
anyone that has the capacity that can do that, we would
And
welcome.
what would be that procedure, ma'am?
I think the best thing to do would be to reach directly out to Ms. Carson in the Community
Okay.
Development Department.
I appreciate
She
that.
will be overseeing this.
Well, and then the final question, what would prevent the organization, or any other organization, from getting to Phase 1 as opposed to waiting to Phase 3 because there's a desperate need in terms of what they showed to me?
That's a great question. Mr. Darby, the ease with which we're doing Phase 1 is because we have already put that RFA out on the street and already had applications come in from these providers. And these were the organizations that we could not fund fully with our HUD money. And so we would have already done the procurement process. There is nothing more we need to do except get council's approval to enter into a contract to allocate this money. So there's nothing else to do except get your approval so that we can contract with them.
You lost me.
I'm sorry. When we get the HUD money from our urban entitlement allocation, we do a request for allocation and we put that out on the street and our nonprofits bid. We had 3 organizations that bid to do critical home repair, but we didn't have enough HUD money to do all of what they asked. So this would bring them to their full request.
This organization is not charging. They want to go through the process to bring before Charleston County Council the houses which are in need. They are not charging any dollars.
Nor do these. Let me think how I can say it. They come to us to ask to contract with us so that we give them money to serve the citizens. And then the 3 that Ms. Carson presented, then go out and do the work at no cost to the homeowner. I am correct on that still, right?
Yes.
Ms. Carson?
Okay.
At no cost to the homeowner. The application process is to apply to the county to
Yes.
get the funds.
Yes. And again, not to exasperate you. Not to exasperate you, but
Never.
why could not this organization or any other organization get into Phase 1? Just explain it very clearly for me, please.
Best way to say that is phase one is already gone through the procurement process. We could do, if we want to call it a phase 1A, and there are organizations that could make proposals to us that
Yes.
in an abbreviated manner.
Yes, ma'am.
It just can't be allocated under the previous
Okay.
application
Okay.
because we've already closed that with procurement.
Well, hopefully, council would go along with a 1A, because again, the need is there. And to wait until phase 3, you just, putting the foot, I won't say putting them back, but there's a sense of urgency. I have a senior citizen, who lives in the community, and I'm gonna call it Mr. Smalls, is about 87. His roof has actually caved in. It's actually caved in. And there's little that we can do. And that's why there's an urgency for this organization to really get involved. So if there's something could be done, if I can have them to talk to you person one-on-one,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if that would be all right?
That's fine, they can
To
go in
do
and
so,
out.
okay.
And then if she deems them something that needs to be done, she can just bring it back to council.
Yes,
sir.
And then we can make a decision.
And finally, I just want to thank council. I always say that a great government is a concerned government. That's what makes governments great. And not only they're concerned, but when they're concerned about the least of these. And these are people whose finances difficulties, not necessarily the fault of their own. Mr. Smalls went to the 3rd grade because that was the law at that time. So he is poor not because of his own accord. It's because what was done to him. And we can't just make up, but I want to help him as best as I could. That was just the law. 3rd grade, you got to go. So anyhow, that's me. So I will have the representative to perhaps reach out to you, ma'am.
Okay, let me ask you one, is there an age limit, senior citizens, or 62, 65, what is the age limit?
We're proposing 62.
Good, that's fine. You can draw Social Security at 62, that's good. All right, Reverend Middleton.
Thank you to Ms. Carson and to the Community Development Office for presenting this. I think this is very clear. You were extremely articulate in helping me understand, specifically the complexities of some of the parameters around this program. I wanted to ask, you identified, and Mr. Darby talked about other contractors being able to come in, Operation Home, Home Works, Home Dreams, even the Sustainability Institute. I did work with them trying to inspire confidence among, especially on the east side of Charleston, because they couldn't get the people to take advantage of the weatherization programs because they didn't trust them. And so, having more money didn't necessarily help that situation. They just needed trust, just having people knock on your door. And so we have this program, specifically when there's a mindset that they're trying to take their houses anyway. There may need to be some additional education that occurs as it relates to some of these programs. But I wanted to ask, you talked about homeowners that are 62 or persons who are 62 in need of home repairs. What if the home is owned by a nonprofit or owned by a church or owned by an entity that rents, to persons who are in that age category and the homes need repair? Would those organizations also be afforded the opportunity to make applications for those homes that house elderly people?
I believe we did respond to this question on Friday, which if it's occupied by a senior and they're income eligible and that's their home, then yes, we would approve that home being livable and safe for them. Is that correct?
Let me follow up on that. Because now we're going apples to oranges. If someone is making a profit on a house that they're renting, that's not a nonprofit. That's not a nonprofit. That's not an elderly person living in there, because that person who's getting the rent should make sure the house is upkept. So I don't want this program to get to where, we thinking we're gonna solve everybody's problem. I hate to see people live in conditions like that, Reverend. But if they're receiving funding, then it should be their responsibility to make sure the house is up to date where it's at. Whether it's a church, whether it's a nonprofit, they should be able to do that, because now you're taking away from the people who really need it, giving it to someone who's making a profit. Now, if they were going to charge these people rent free and says, okay, for the next 5 years, we ain't going to charge you no rent, that's one thing. But if you fix it, they're going to be looking to rent it, and I guarantee you they're gonna increase the price of the rent. So I hope that's not in the program where we're gonna be helping organizations like that.
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
We discussed this as staff, and what we don't know is what kind of applications we're going to get. For example, if a parent or a child owns a property and they rent the property and they live in that same area, there is a possibility, but we're going to have to take this on a case-by-case basis as to how we could get them eligible. Particularly when it relates to heirs property and you look at multiple homes on a piece of property, there could be someone living in one and renting another. So we don't want to be so absolute as to say no, but we want to have an opportunity as staff to evaluate the situations as they come in.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I just don't want people for profit, you know, but that's fair enough.
Absolutely.
All right. You finished, Reverend?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Swears?
Mr. Ant, the three Phase 1 groups that received grants under the HUD funding, they applied for more than that. I assume that their application, the amount they applied for was somewhat random, or did they know exactly, you know, the extent of what they could do? Because I'm thinking, you know, they may want additional funding. They may have capacity to do more, but they knew that the HUD funds were limited, so they applied for a lower amount. So, and maybe they would be able to reapply in Phase 3, or how would we work that?
Yes, sir. We absolutely spoke about that also. Ms. Carson, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or do you want me to?
You can.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir, they absolutely could. Some of the applicants really are limited in their capacity because they don't have contractors to do the work. So they may have 10 people on the list, but only 2 contractors bid on the job. That's why Phase 3 is so important to grow the capacity. But to answer your question briefly, yes, they could reapply, and other organizations can apply who may be more able to handle this type of fund than HUD, because HUD's funds are typically more difficult to administer. So we think there are more organizations that will ask in Phase 3. And Mr. Darby, please note that Phase 3 doesn't mean down the road in time. It just means a different process within the county. So it's not like Phase 3, Phase 1 and 2 have to happen and be complete before Phase 3 starts.
I like the Phase 1A. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Teddy, also, you know, the age limit of 62, I think that's going to be a challenge. I think the program is probably, as you stated, Mr. Ant, based on the applications, I think we're going to have to tweak the program a bit as we go, because simply saying 62 or older, I don't know, I guess that's legal, but I think we're going to run into problems when we start going down that road. So I look forward to seeing how that works out, but I don't think this is the final product by any means. You know, I do, especially in the rural areas, I do see a lot of homes from time to time that need repairs, but not extensive repairs. And then you go by 3 months later and, you know, it's abandoned because they didn't make the, you know, $5,000 repairs that were needed. So now you have a home just totally worthless in an eyesore for decades on end. So, you know, I'm hoping we can do some good things here. Again, I think it's going to be a challenge because you will have folks, Mr. Pryor, as you mentioned, you will have folks trying to improve a home for, you know, to turn a big profit. You know, I don't necessarily blame them, other than they're using grant money to do it. So it's going to be an interesting program. I think it's going to take a lot of monitoring, though.
And Mr. Chair, I tend to agree with Mr. Swears on the age because that's quite gracious of 62. But, you know, I was of the opinion that someone who was 62 of this day and time was able to procure the best of education possible. I'm talking to folks in the 80s and 90s who just weren't awarded the opportunities there at the time. So I thank you for being very gracious, but I'd like to have that revisited as well.
Okay. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have several questions. So first thing I want to clarify, each applicant that's interested, they need to apply directly to the county or to any one of these 3 agencies.
Individuals would need to apply to the nonprofit. It would be
Okay.
the nonprofits or small developers that would apply to the county. The county will not be granting to individual people, we will be granting to, at the will of council, the organizations that are reviewed and then brought back to you, except for the first 3 that are in phase 1.
Okay, I didn't see any phone numbers listed when the names of these organizations were mentioned earlier. So is that something that we'll hear later on tonight, or is that just going to be televised?
We certainly will do a lot of media. We will do the media outreach that we typically do. And I think Ms. Carson mentioned the FTE that we would bring on would also be doing outreach, because we do know that some of the individuals that might need this the most are not going to be the ones that are going to have ready access to social media or any of our other outreach. So that was why Ms. Carson described the boots on the ground approach. When we've done this in the past, when we were expanding the well and septic upgrade program, we did a similar outreach, and it got to a lot of homeowners, and community development staff in that department has a lot of experience working in this community doing that, going to neighborhood meetings, going to town council meetings, going to homeowner association groups, church groups. They've done it all.
So now, is that going to be the one new person that's going to be going to all these places, or are we talking about she's going to be an addition to your staff to do that?
Currently, council has allocated $3 million. What we don't know is the demand. As the demand increases, we may very well have to come back to Mr. Darby's earlier point and either request additional funds or additional support. The support would come from ARPA. It is an allowable expense, but we would need to come back to council. For now, we are trying to get our hands around this new program and figure out what we don't yet know so that we can make it as effective as possible.
I have a lot of people waiting on the list, so I just wanted to know
Yes, ma'am.
if you're going to have enough staff to handle this. So these 3 companies or nonprofits, I also want to know where they're located. Are they in the north area, or are they spread out? Because I know we had some problems with organizations being in the north area not wanting to come to my area in the southern part of the county.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Carson, will you address, we spoke with each of those organizations to find out where they could serve and if they would focus on certain areas at the request of council for the funding that they were allocated. Do you want to talk briefly about that?
So the 3 agencies, Operation Home, HomeWorks, and Home Dreams, they have worked across the county from Wadmalaw to McClellanville, all 3 agencies, including Lincolnville, and they've expressed desire to continue to do so.
2 companies.
3,
Oh, all 3 of them are going to be all over the county.
yes.
Okay. I heard the age bracket for senior citizens being 62. There are people who are disabled that are not 62. Are we including those people in this?
Currently, the proposal to council is 62 and above. And staff tried to come up with something that was already established as an age cutoff. We certainly can consider other things. There's nothing that would prohibit an amendment to including disabled individuals if it's verified. Am I right, Ms. Carson? Make sure I'm not saying that out of
I
turn.
didn't hear the beginning of the question, I'm sorry.
If someone was disabled but under the age limit, is there anything that would prohibit us from being able to work on that if council directed us to include that?
Don't believe so.
I would agree.
What, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Mind, Mr. Chairman, by saying, and just thinking outside the box, as opposed to an age limit, why don't we just award according to the need? And may I give you an example? I have a parent whose house mold, the drainage not working because the South Carolina disaster just ran out of money, and the conditions that this lady and my student that they're living in, that's appalling, and yet we can't find any dollars to fix it other than getting some friends together who have to come up with almost, I think about 17, 18 grand. And there's a need there, but she doesn't make the age. She has a son who's living in a house with mold, and you can see the fire on the electric socket that caught fire, and the plumbing is just a disaster. She has more flies and all that kind of stuff. It's just, so is there something that we can revisit, Ms. Johnson? Mr.
Well,
Chairman?
I absolutely think we should consider people who are disabled. There are a lot of people who are totally disabled.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we're just ruling them out with this age 62 and up. So I just want to
Understood. I
make sure
concur.
that we look at that.
Okay, I think Mr. Rand said they'll might do some tweaking. So if they want to do some tweaking, they can come back, to council and say, as we decided to do some differences as far as age and disability.
Absolutely. And as we implement this, we'll know more what the situations are that we haven't accounted for. And so we've built that into our review process because we realize that as we create this, there are going to be questions we haven't yet answered. The challenge is that we all know there is probably more need than there is capacity or funding. And so for staff to be successful in this first phase, we tried to categorize it not as a catch-all, so that they were not in the middle of having to decide who had the greatest need. In our experience in the past, when we did this, the challenge was there was more need and it was all equal. And so how to best manage this with some parameters is how we're proposing this for today to get started again.
All right, one quick question. So this offer funds have to be spent by the year, 2024?
They have to be obligated by the year 2024 and spent by the year 2026.
All right, so we got some work to do with $3 million. Okay. All right, anybody else before we move on? Mr. Sass and then Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that that this is a very incredibly good program idea, and I congratulate y'all for getting this done so quick because it just came up very recently, and I think y'all have done a lot of work to get to this point. I think it's elementary that we try to keep people in their homes because it not only keeps them in their homes, but it helps their families' equity down the line, and so it's very important that we do that. I do have a question about the work that's going to be done. And that's going to be, is that going to be done by licensed contractors that are maybe training people, but it will be done by licensed contractors, and is it checked on, or is it looked at, or is it subject to being inspected or anything like that?
One of the reasons that we started with phase one with the entities that we did is because they are familiar with our permitting process and our contract process. Our contract, they have to follow the rules of the county. There's nothing about the federal, in fact, the federal money specifies that we have to follow the local ordinances.
Good.
Nothing supersedes that.
Thank you.
Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree, Mr. Sass. I like what I'm hearing, specifically that the contractors apply, that the money's paid directly to them, and that we've got reliable, experienced partners that know our issues. So I like all of that. A couple questions, I guess, Ms. Carson. We talk about the need. There's need all over, maybe more so than others, but I know in West Ashley there's certainly need, maybe not as much as other areas. But how do we spread it around a little bit, I guess, to make sure that we're not focused all in just one area, and a little bit is doled out all over the place?
Well, our hope is through hiring that person who do some marketing and connecting with community leaders, they can get a better sense of where the areas are that haven't been served that well. So we're looking at the outreach is really helping us to understand where the needs exist.
Okay. To Mr. Schweer's point about people always, trying to profit or gain, I mean, how are we, are we going to place a lien on the property if we do work, or is there some type of encumbrance? They have to stay there for some number of years, and maybe it drops off or trickles off. So what's to stop somebody from getting a $30,000 new roof, which probably would eat it all up, but do some repairs that would drive the market value up, and then go, well, I'm just going to sell it now and take the money and go?
We haven't discussed any deed restrictions. In fact, if we're working on heirs' property, you really can't look at an enforceable lien. So there are no deed restrictions that we've discussed with these funds.
It's not enough to kill it for me. I would like there to be some protection there. But on the 62, I guess you almost have to start somewhere. I mean, I worry about the older people maybe are not as able to go out and find work as maybe younger people are. That's a concern I've got. If we open it up to everybody, 30 and 40-year-olds, able-bodied people who may come in and grab the money before the elderly can get to it. So that would be my only concern about having a free-for-all. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Ms. Honeycutt?
My question about the restricting the ability to transfer the property.
So there's a motion, is there a motion? Move to approve. Is there a second? Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. 1B, go right ahead, ma'am.
Ms. Teacher will present 1B and 1C.
Yes, 1B and 1C.
Relative to the 18 houses that we purchased from the Charleston County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. This is the program, again, a new initiative, a new plan, asking for council's endorsement of our vision.
On February 1st of 2022, Charleston County Council entered an agreement with Charleston County Housing and Redevelopment Authority to purchase 18 properties. The purpose of this purchase was to maintain these properties as affordable rather than have them sold at market rate. Upon initial analysis, building services staff from both Charleston County and the City of North Charleston determined that 2 of these homes would require demolition. I'd like to note that for these 2 homes, the county only paid for the value of the land and no value attached to any existing structure. The Charleston Home Program is a 4-phase strategy to develop the remaining 16 homes. This program was developed using the input we received from 15 local organizations in the affordable housing field, received through 2 roundtable discussions. You'll see a list of these 15 organizations as an attachment to your yellow sheet. The map on the screen shows the distribution of these 18 homes throughout the county. You'll see those marked with red as those that will be demolished, and the other in green. Those will be developed through the Charleston Home Program. You'll see that these homes can be found in Ladson, the City of North Charleston, West Ashley, Johns Island, and James Island. The goal of the way we ranked these homes to develop them in 4 phases is to ensure that we develop affordable housing in areas where it's least likely to be available first. We identified several criteria by which to rank these homes for their phases. This includes vacancy rate. This is done by census tract. It includes median income, median home value or median rent value, density potential, and whether or not the home exists within a qualified census tract. The reason we decided to develop in phases is to give us the ability to evaluate both successes and challenges experienced with each phase before moving forward, as well as increase the likelihood of success of our partners. We see these phases as allowing for increased collaboration for each phase and potentially encouraging multiple partners to submit one proposal. On the screen, you'll see the different steps that we hope to take to achieve this outcome. The first will be to hire a contracted qualified professional to conduct an assessment on the estimated value of repairs required for each home to make them livable. We'll also be hiring a construction manager to oversee development to ensure all operations are compliant with our zoning and land development regulations, as well as our building code. This individual will not be dedicated solely to this project, but will also lend much needed expertise to other community services, operations, and programs. Following the hiring of these individuals and the completion of assessment of homes, at least in the first phase, we'll be issuing a request for proposals. These proposals will be evaluated by a scoring committee based on the following criteria. That will be capacity to complete necessary repairs, the cohesiveness of the vision in the proposal with the Housing Our Future plan. We're expecting to receive that in September of this year, as well as income limits and other qualifications that the applying organization will require for future residents of the homes, as well as creativity in their project vision. What we mean by creativity is their vision achieving the highest and best use of the property? Are there opportunities for subdivision that they hope to utilize? Are they able to receive a special exception to turn a home into a duplex? We're hoping to see these things and prioritize them. This may also mean creativity in how they hope to implement their development. Are they collaborating with other organizations or utilizing our disadvantaged businesses enterprise? Once we've completed assessment with our scoring committee, staff will make a recommendation of selected applicants and bring them to council for approval. On the screen, you'll see an example of how we hope to lay out these phases. You'll see that in July, we're planning to hire both the contracted professional and the construction manager. In August, we'll issue the RFP. In September, we'll bring those selected applicants to council for approval with rehabilitation of the homes beginning in October. And depending on success of the programs, this is a tentative timeline. We'll be following in September with the issue of the RFP for the next phase and so on. Some final notes to consider of this program is that we are requesting a $350,000 budget from ARPA funds. This money will not only be to support the staff needed or that I mentioned in previous slides, but also to maintain properties, keep grass cut, etc. Also, we do know that council might be expecting some sort of return on investment for these properties. We know that these 18 homes being redeveloped is not going to solve our affordable housing program, and we hope to see some sort of return to continue implementing affordable housing solutions further out. We will be working with facilities staff to create a return on investment program that's unique to each property that will be presented to council at a later date. Finally, we will be requiring a 90-year deed restriction. This is consistent with the City of Charleston's requirements and will maintain these properties as affordable for the foreseeable future. So what we're requesting today under 2 yellow sheets is that you approve demolition of 1903 Ghana Street and 1822 Auburn Street. For Ghana Street, we are asking that we use ARPA funds to complete the demolition, as the Auburn Drive location is within the City of North Charleston, and they will be using their urban entitlement funds. We are also asking for approval of the Charleston Home Program, the framework that I just presented to you. We are asking for authorization of a $350,000 ARPA budget to complete ongoing maintenance and to hire necessary staff. And we are asking for the authorization of 1 full-time employee for a construction manager. To close things up, I'd like to note that many of these homes are in neighborhoods where they're surrounded by $300,000 to $600,000 properties. This program gives us an opportunity to make these neighborhoods attainable for more than just a portion of Charleston County residents. And our hope is that we'll be bringing developers and nonprofits to the table to provide an example of affordable housing and encourage others to complete those projects in the future. Thank you.
Any questions? Reverend Middleton?
Move for staff recommendations.
Dale, second? Second. All right, now discussion, Reverend Middleton.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the hiring of the construction manager, are you putting out an RFP, and will this be an open process for anyone who's out on the street who may not necessarily be within the county's short list of contractors that you normally, deal with?
There were 2 elements. The first is a contract for a vendor to give us the cost to repair. So that would go through whatever procurement process we need to do. The FTE would go through our standard hiring process that we use for all county employees.
And so this would be posted, this position would be posted on the county's website? And
Yes, sir.
Got it. Very well. Thank you.
Mr. Swears?
Yeah, I certainly support what has been proposed, but Mr. Ant, I do have a question though. We have all along talked about, if we do affordable housing initiatives, we don't want to own the affordable housing, okay? So when will we cease to own these homes?
The proposals that the individual organizations bring to us in each of these phases will help us determine the right way to both structure the return on investment as well as the ownership transfers. And the reason I say it that way is some of these organizations may do home ownership initiatives, and some may do rental rehab, and some may do duplexes. And so it is still our goal and the end result of these proposals to bring back to council the disposition of that property ownership at that time.
Okay.
Without the return on investment, we can't present a complete picture to you, though.
Right. And I do certainly agree with the return on investment, and because it will be reinvestment with us, I would imagine. But I have worried all along about affordable housing mission creep, and I just think we need to keep that in mind. We bought these homes out of need, and we're repairing the homes. Kind of wish we weren't doing that. I wish somebody else was, but nonetheless we are. So, but I do think we need to realize this will have an end date. These homes will not be in our ownership for a long period of time.
Clarify, Mr. Schweers, the proposals that the organizations bring to us, they, much like the earlier critical rehab program, they will be doing the repairs. We will not be doing the repairs, but we will have to first bring that back to you all to tell you what they're proposing so we can then determine ownership and then rehab process.
Anybody else? Just a quick question. So when this money goes away, what are we going to do with these FTEs? Because I don't want these people to think they got a 20-year job.
Absolutely.
And this money runs out in 2024.
Right. So many of our grant-funded positions have ended when the grant funds end. In this particular arena, we have had a construction manager in the past working with our HUD funds, and we have over the years seen the increasing need to have that. So we have other federal money that potentially will be married with this money. There is no plan whatsoever to maintain it inside the general fund. It will be maintained with the federal funds.
All right. And so this will come out of different part, not the $3 million. It's $439,000 y'all proposing. Will come out of different part than either the $3 million home repair.
Say that one more time.
All right, so we set aside $3 million for home repairs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the 350 and 89, it's $439,000. So I don't want that to come out of the repair money because now we making it short. You're only talking 2.5 versus 3.
Correct,
So-
which is why the request to approve that money, it will come out of ARPA, not out of the original set aside.
Okay, I'm good with that. All right, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 1D, Mr. Werman.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Speak right into that mic for me, please.
Very good. I think we did them together.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. So I at the inspiration of Councilman Darby and Councilman Middleton, wanted to have this discussion, and frankly, I think I can just open it with a motion. Again, sort of modeled after what Mr. Darby's done, sort of trailblazing with the repair front. I would move to designate $20 million in ARPA funds for use as a housing fund, very similar to the previous program that we just saw. The program guidelines would be developed and presented for final approval, and then at that point, that is when the actual, I guess, allocation would occur.
Second.
Second by Reverend Milton, discussion. Anybody got any discussion? Raise your hand, and all right. Ms. Honeycutt.
Yeah, I'm going to ask staff how that works.
Right now, you're just moving the money.
The set aside, or the proposed set aside, would be just as we did with the $3 million, and then staff would need to go back and develop a program to determine what to do with the $20 million.
But does it have to be spent in this, under the same obligation and spending timelines? I mean,
Yes, it does.
so how, is there any conceivable way you can explain to me right now how that can be done?
No, ma'am, not right now. One of the things that Mr. Davis's department is working on in conjunction with the consultant is that comprehensive plan and identifying a pipeline of potential projects that could be achieved with gap financing. But we do not currently have those projects in our hopper.
Okay, you done? Mr. Werman?
Very good. I think I can address a little bit of that, and certainly don't want to, I don't want to make this part of the motion. This would just be more of a comment. But I think, we have, discovered that we can use funds both as gap financing, where you would have this obligation to units type timeline we'd be on, as well as just to purchase land. There's, separate ARPA regulations that apply there. We, in fact, have bought abandoned properties using ARPA funds. So one idea would certainly be to allow the housing fund, in whatever way it's administered, to have both options. Certainly, if there are no projects in the hopper, there certainly will be land. There will be a fixed amount of it before this. There will be a fixed amount of it after this. That is essentially the heart of the issue here. So I think we can create, and again, happy to have our folks take a look at that, but I think there is a conceivable way that we can create a path to meeting those, obligated by 2024, spent by 2026 obligations. So that's sort of what I have in mind. Again, we've I think had a good sort of iterative process of folks giving comments and getting feedback. So I'm not necessarily making that part of the motion, but that's sort of how I would envision it working.
Okay.
Yeah, I also
Motion?
just wanted to support the idea of, just obligating land right now or securing land, because certainly as we look at Charleston County, we recognize that no more land is being created, and as development is occurring, particularly in West Ashley, when I walk on Beast Ferry Road and or ride my bike all the way out to Adams Run or Red Top, et cetera, I see land specifically on Beast Ferry Road for sale all the time. And we've heard of developers coming through right here, purchasing that land, developing it for whatever, and the county also not necessarily getting into the affordable housing business, as it relates to owning property, but definitely designating the land for the same purpose that other developers are coming in and making subdividable lots that can not necessarily be for profit, but can be affordable for some time to come for people who wish to live in certain areas. And so I wanted to support at least the exploration of setting aside some portions of, whatever this fund could be, to purchase property for future use.
Mr. Werman, could you restate the motion again? I want to make sure I understand what.
I can. Move to designate $20 million in ARPA funding for use as part of a housing fund. Program guidelines would be developed by staff and presented for final approval to council.
Do we have in total?
How much money we have total with the new allocation and old allocation and ARPA?
Before you took action tonight, you had about $40 million of the total pot left, a little less.
Billion. Okay. The other rest has been kind of, okay. Any other questions? Reverend Moody, Mr. Moody.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Reverend.
You got promoted.
It could be
I'm saying it's better
prophetic.
tonight, so.
Tonight, so he-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rand, or Administrator, this council set priorities for that money. What goes away if we spend this money here?
Mr. Moody, nothing has been actually designated yet out of that pot, is my understanding.
May I clarify? The council strategic vision that you all embarked on with the Riley Center was to set a list of priorities. So when I hired Mr. Davis, that list of priorities has become his sort of structure to work on. So I think part of our plan that we would bring back to you all would include the impact. If we took $20 million and devoted it to this, what would the impact be on your other priorities? I think that would be part of what staff would need to present to you so you could make that decision.
But let me ask this question. When you're talking about affordable housing, don't they intertwine? I mean, his plan and what Mr. Werman is going to intertwine anyway. So I don't want people to get confused as if you're taking away from what the Institute said, because it can be intertwined. He is just saying, set the money aside for affordable housing. And so whatever Mr. Davis brings back could intertwine with what Mr. Werman is talking about. It could be land, it could be, home, purchasing stuff. It could be a number of things, but I think they all intertwine. So I don't think we're losing anything. If you ask me, it's just how we get to where we want to be. But he's just asking to make sure the money is set aside before it's spent.
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on.
You know,
Do you want to clarify? I've got a few more questions.
Yes, sir.
The only thing I would offer for clarification is that council set additional priorities beyond affordable housing
Right.
in the strategic vision. So that would be the elements that I'm talking about. I think you addressed a number of items in that. So we would want to present the impact to those other items, not under the housing umbrella.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Moody?
fund, we would maintain control of that fund, so it's not going somewhere to be managed by other organizations. We would keep that money here until directed by council.
So as part of the motion, obviously, it does leave the administration of the fund sort of TBD. This is an issue that I've personally spoken with Mr. Ant about. It's an issue that a lot of folks have spoken on, whether it's done, as something that would legally be considered a trust fund, whether it's administered within the county, whether it's administered one way or another. To be very clear, no, this does not set that on any one particular course. That leaves the program design in staff's hands.
Ms. Honeycutt?
What I wanted to make sure I understood is, I've seen some with their shirts on tonight. Cajun's here representing, they've been begging for a housing trust fund, but your motion is not to create a housing trust fund yet, right?
It could be, but no, I'm not moving for
Okay.
what would be, there's the statute, you would have an administrator. I'm not moving for that particular, particular design. I think, to be quite frank, what's informed what I'm thinking more is a little bit of some of the presentations I've seen from our consultant, talking about a fund more in the general sense. And I'm not an expert on this, but I like to think it's a big pot of money that can be used for gap financing. And I would, think that adding land banking would be useful for that. That's the general framework. How that gets specifically administered, I'm happy to defer to the folks who are experts on that.
Good, Ms. Honeycutt?
I think so, but I am interested in Mr. Moody's follow-up question. I know one of the priorities for my district is sewer and getting folks off of septic where we can, especially close to waterways where we have TMDLs in place and other issues. And so if we've now allocated $5 million or however many tonight that we did, plus now this $20 million, our pot is dwindling. So I just want to make sure that we do get some analysis from you all about how these allocations are going to affect what remaining priorities get addressed.
Okay. Mr. Swears?
I don't know. I think much like the failed referendum, I think what we're asking for is a commitment without a plan. But I think the plan is in progress, correct, Mr. Ant?
That is correct. The consultants that you authorized us to hire are in the midpoint of completing the plan for council's adoption.
I mean, I think you could make, Mr. Wehrman, you could make the argument, when funds are, when someone on council attempts to allocate funds for something else specifically, you could make the argument, well, but a housing trust fund, we need to keep money there for that. But right now, if you just told me we're going to spend $20 million on a housing trust fund, I'm like, what's that mean? I mean, we've been throwing that around for a long time, but I still don't really know what it means. And I think Mr. Ant's group is working on what that means. So I'm not going to make a commitment for $20 million now to a housing trust fund that I don't have a good definition for.
He didn't say trust fund.
He didn't say trust
Well,
fund.
whatever form it may
He
take.
said
Point taken. I understand what you're
Like Mr. Darby's program was more specific, smaller dollar figure and more specific. And we quickly developed something. The other concepts we've been working for a good while on, and we still don't have a final product ready to be presented to council. So for me to commit to it when it's not before us, I'm not going to do that right now.
Okay.
Understood, Councilman Trues. I would push back on what you're saying here a little bit, though. I don't think it's more or less specific. My understanding of what Mr. Darby was doing was he said, we need emergency home repairs for folks, who are suffering and who need to get their home fixed. What I'm saying is there are two, basic functions that I think any sort of comprehensive plan is necessarily going to have to factor in, which is the acquisition of land and then this gap financing function that we've sort of heard about, a lot over the years. And so I think just as Councilman Darby was saying, we need something that solves this problem. I'm asking for something that solves those two problems. I get that it's another dollar figure, but I think the scope and the need of what we're facing with the affordable housing crisis calls for that. And yes, to your point, I mean, yes, part of this is motivated by the fact that I don't know how many ARPA funds are going to be left. And I think it would be frankly, a travesty if we didn't sort of put down a, what you want to call it, a down payment or something on what I certainly envision and hope others do as potentially, sort of the driving force of our housing policy moving forward. So that's my thinking. I understand your position, but just want to respond to that.
Okay.
I do have a question here.
Then go ahead, Ms. Johnson. I'll go to Mr. Sass and back to Ms. Honeycutt.
Hey, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, sir. So, the money to be set aside, 20 million for housing, and you, Mr. Wehrman, talk about purchasing land, possibly with this money. And I was just wondering, did you have some idea about where the land would be purchased from? How are we going to spread that out? Because I think that's an important thing for me to know.
Listen, I think that certainly, I would guess that much like Councilman Moody's comment regarding the repairs, that folks are going to want to make sure that their districts are served, and certainly happy to continue that discussion and sort of that back and forth process we've had with staff. This is not specifically targeting any area. But I understand that, you'll certainly want some folks, and there's obviously in a lot of the rural areas some cheaper land. There's also, I think, some reasons countervailing to make sure that there's areas closer to public transit and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to work that balance. But again, I would say that this is not, me having these details baked in. I'm again happy to, let staff kind of weigh in on that.
Well, I am kind of leaning towards supporting this, but I really don't have enough information and understanding to know that the rural areas will not be left out because they don't have public transportation. So I'm just wondering, how do we describe what would be affordable housing in a rural area that we could purchase land for?
Right. I'm not to be clear, I'm not coming here with that baked into the analysis. I think that staff has proven to be very adept at taking the concerns and, making sure that those are weaved and sort of designed into a program. And I'll tell you, Ms. Johnson, I'm certainly not going to be asking that every, acre of this go towards, the LCRT corridor. I will tell you that I do think it's important that we develop in those areas, but I'd be happy to, work with you or work with staff or work with all of council in developing that balance. And I do think it is a balance. So I do recognize that, the areas that I've described aren't necessarily the rural areas and that there does have to be a balance. So that's just a 1 of 9 type opinion. That's not, I don't think, on the floor today, but I can certainly make that commitment to you 1 of 9.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, you done?
Oh, no, not yet. One more time.
Okay, I want to move it
so
along.
I'm just-
These people out in the audience.
Well, I know. We need some support for this. And I'm just trying to see how the community that I serve would be included in this.
Mr. Warren, just before you answer that question, I think we're getting into a battle of my district versus this district and that district. We serve the county as a whole, and I don't think nobody up here is going to say, put all the money in my district and forget everybody else's district. So I think before we start tearing things apart, let us just stick to the basic questions because the need is out there for affordable housing. The need is out there to be repairs. And, it sounds like to me folks are wanting things done in their district that they couldn't get done in the general budget. So now they're trying to use the ARPA fund, which I think should be intended for the people that needs the most. It's not a wish list to where I wish I had this 5 years ago, but I got it this year. The money should go where it's intended. That's to most of the poor people and to help these people with affordable housing or whatever needs that actually was designated. I don't want us to get off on the turn and say, I want to build this in my neighborhood, and then people still suffer. So I think we ought to look and stay focused on the need, not the district. That's just 1 out of 9. And then after staff comes back with some type of recommendation, then we can get into the weeds and pick apart what we think we should do. But right now, there is no plan. He's just asking to move the money, is what I understand. And then we can focus on a referendum, where you would have steady funding to do some of the things that, you know, a lot of people want done in districts. So the referendum would be, if the people see you got skin in the game, they don't mind adding to that skin in the game. But if we got zero in the pot, you know, it'll be a hard sell to tell the people. So I don't want to offend nobody, but I just want us to stay on point on what we are, the need, not the district. Because I got a lot of need in my district, but I never come out and say this is in my district, because we all vote to do what's right. Ms. Johnson, back to you. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we don't always agree on everything. So I'm going to go back to Ms. Durant here, because my concern really is we don't have, that I recall, a definition for affordable housing. And if we're going to put this money aside, like I said before, I don't want the rural areas to not be included in this. I got to make that very clear. And so if anything else comes up, if I support this tonight and something else comes up where I'm not seeing any support is happening in the rural area, then I just would not continue to support.
Mr. Werman, did your motion just say housing?
So,
Hold on, let her finish. I don't want no interruption. And then I'll go to Mr. Sass. Hold your thoughts, and then Ms. Honeycutt, and then Mr. Darby, and I'll come back to you, Reverend.
I don't have any thoughts.
All right.
so the money for the Affordable Housing Fund, that's what you said, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I thought it
So
just
that's
said
why
housing.
I'm confused about that. So now, we don't have any definition for what is affordable housing, right?
Can he read the motion again? Because I thought he just said housing and not affordable housing.
I did say housing. But no, I mean, it would go towards affordable housing. I mean, the way that it, you know, any sort of gap financing, or if we were to land bank it, that would go towards what would be affordable housing. I mean, my definition of affordable housing, Ms. Johnson, is certainly not based on location. It would be based on percentage of AMI, which is generally what we do. And I think I even saw that, you know, in Mr. Darby's motion, was there an AMI aspect to who was qualified in that? The point is, I mean, you know, we can, again, I would be happy to defer this to other folks, but my definition would probably be either 80 AMI and below or 120 AMI and below, one of the two. And that's sort of some of the areas that I think a lot of folks have focused on, you know, in this policy sphere. But you're talking about folks who either make slightly less than average and below, or folks who make average and below. So, you know, that's how I would certainly define it. I would think that our staff would probably define it along similar lines, and I certainly would not define it. You know, I'm not defining it in terms of where it's located.
Okay, I'm going to be finished, Mr. Chairman. The $20 million, because I support affordable housing, I'm going to support this. But I wanted to be very clear that this comes back up again, and I'm not seeing how we are being able to spread this money in the southern part of the county. Then I would definitely have a heart attack, or just you won't be seeing the support to move forward.
Ms. Johnson, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two concerns. One, that we're talking about $20 million of about $40 million that we expect to get. That's coming. And we don't have it as well planned out as I would like to have it. And my feeling about that is that if that $40 million comes to Charleston County, we'll still have it. We'll be able to allocate it wherever it needs to go. And that's the other portion of my concern, is that we have managed through really hard work of our staff to get to this point, and we've spent the first $40 million. Basically, we've spent the first $40 million of the $80 million we were going to get.
And we've spent it on a lot of things, and I think it's spread around, and it's a good plan. I think what we've spent the money on so far is a good plan. And I'm not saying spending money on affordable housing is not a good plan, but we don't have the plan yet. We don't have the plan. And I am also concerned about where we go in the next 2 years with our economy. Now, we've weathered the last year very well because our administrator and our legal and the deputies and everybody here and all the county has worked really hard, and we made it through COVID pretty well. But we don't know what the next couple of years are going to be like, how our population, how our citizens are going to get affected by what we're facing. Right now, we don't know exactly what we are facing. Now, I didn't come here tonight not thinking that I would not approve any money towards affordable housing, but I am concerned that $20 million is half of the remaining money that we have coming back to us. So I just want to tell you all that.
Okay, Ms. Honeycutt, and then I'll go to Mr. Darby.
Yes, sir.
Final.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I think my concern, to Mr. Schwiers's point, is partly the plan and partly the balance of other priorities. I don't think I would have any problem allocating $10 million tonight because I feel like that's a quarter of what's left.
That's what
It's, you know, there's other priorities, but without some justification, even if we had a piece of property right now that we could say, okay, it's a $20 million parcel, we're ready to go buy it. I might even be willing to move on that. I just feel like without knowing exactly what we're allocating the 20 million to is I guess I wonder to some degree, what is the impact of making this allocation by motion? I mean, is it binding, or could we come back and say, oh, wait, we over allocated, we only need 15 of it? What would be the impact there? Say we needed more for sewer somewhere else. Could we come back and say, no, we're going to unallocate part of it?
I'll try and take that question. My understanding is similar again to what we've done in the past is no, I don't think this is binding, but what I do think it can be is effective because I saw, this process just implemented a month ago with Mr. Darby and thought it was very effective as we've had today. So, obviously we've been talking a lot. We've got a lot of great info from our consultants. We've had great info from the community and from past task forces and the Housing Steering Committee. And so, we've certainly been doing a lot. This seemed to be procedurally a very effective tool as I've seen it employed, like I said, a month ago. So that's what I think we accomplish is something that, gets the ball rolling in a fairly concrete way, gives a sort of action item that would be brought back to council. I'm not the attorney here, but I don't think that it would be binding to that point. I would be binding on my heart, but perhaps not legally.
Your answer was absolutely correct, Ms. Honeycutt. You could unallocate if council so wishes in the future, before those funds are specifically designated to a project.
Thank you.
Mr. Pryor, I don't mean to be offensive this afternoon. I really don't. But with these various questions, when it comes down to the rich folk in Greenbelt and we give $10, $12 million, these questions aren't as piercing. But when it comes down to poor folk, we got every question in the book. We talking a lousy $20 million. That's $20 million for the entire county. Not for Liberty Hill, not for just West Ashley. We talking about the entire county, $20 million. That's flinging a penny to a beggar. But yet we're going to question that. I really don't understand that. But let the rich folk come, nothing said. We don't ask those questions. And I resent that very strongly. And that's always been the case. Not with just present council, but every council that I've been on. It's always rich folk get what they want to get. But when it comes down to blacks and disadvantaged whites, they get nothing. Nothing. And now we just here asking for $20 million. And I applaud because Mr. Pryor and Ms. Johnson agreed years ago we were trying to do this. I applaud Mr. Weirman and Mr. Middleton, Reverend Middleton, for taking the lead in this. I really do. We're getting up in age. We need these young folks to come forward. And they have this clairvoyance to say, we want to set aside $20 million. So what's wrong with that? Again, I don't mean to offend anyone. I really don't. But I get tired of well folks. The rich folks get whatever they want to get, whatever they want to get. But when it comes to poor people, we got to beg. I'm just tired of it. No, hold on, sir. Let me finish. Because, see, I got something I need to say to Kajam, too. I'm gonna get y'all right too. My name is Man. No B, no O, no Y. Man. Now, you all asked for 10 million. We're trying to give you 20. That's what we're going to do. And the way how you all attack Charleston County Council, the way you attacked me, and now look what we are doing. Please, if county council and majority says we're going to do, that's what we're going to do. But the way how this organization has come toward us and come at us, that's not fair. We are here to help you. We are not the enemy. We are not. We try to lead by example. So again, you got more than what you asked for. You asked for 10, and yet you get 20. And just as you were condemning Charleston County, I hope now that you will give us some props, providing the 5 votes or more go through with this right here. I just have to say that because it really bothered me, the measure, the way how Kajam does certain things. I really don't like that. Thank you.
Okay.
I was going to mention, Mr. Darby, thank you. I would be more inclined to listen to groups like that if they had some skin in the game. There's
No doubt.
churches out there, and they just want to take, pass the hat, get in the game with us. Thank you, sir.
All right, the motion. Any more outbursts, and I'm gonna ask that you leave the building. Now, we got a decorum here, and we want to keep it civil. Any more outbursts, I'm gonna ask the officer to escort you out the building, and then you can watch the rest of this on YouTube. All right, so there's been a motion and a second. Call the roll, Ms. Salisbury.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt? Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass? Mr. Schwiers?
Nay.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Motion
All right,
passes
motion
6.
passes 6-3. All right, so now we're gonna move on.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask Mr. Weirman and Reverend Middleton, along with Mr. Wren, because with the 20 million, have we got all the weeds out? Of course not. I would ask that you ask organizations such as Kajam and other entities that deal with housing to get their input. So those questions could be answered, which were asked tonight, because we have to have community input. To say we're going to have $20 million of housing, to do that, no. We do need a community input. So I would suggest strongly, Mr. Weirman, that those organizations such as Kajam and others will have some input, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we move to item 2, which is FY 22 budget items. 2A, FY council contingency. What is the pleasure? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed. That's with amendments, right? Reverend Middleton, that's with amendments.
Yes.
Let the record state with amendments. Mr. Moody, second amendment. All right. Item number 3 is the county administrator and the county attorney's evaluation and salary. As you know, on Thursday, today is Tuesday, right? Because these holidays got me all
Yes,
mixed
sir,
up
today's
sometimes.
Tuesday.
We discussed the evaluation of both of our employees. Matter of fact, all 4 of our employees, but these 2 are more salaried and under contract. And in the meeting, I think they both received great scores, which would be exceed expectation. Am I correct, ladies and gentlemen?
At least meets.
Sir?
At least meets expectation.
Meets expectation. And if council members wants to say more, they can say more. But I think these, they're doing a fine job. They're leading the county in the right direction. So if there's a motion on the floor from somebody, they can make a motion. I can't make motion. I wish I could. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion
Would you
to,
separate them for me too? Because Reverend Milton asked that they be separated. So would you take the county administrator first?
okay. I'd like to recommend that we give an increase of 6% for the county administrator.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Honeycutt. Any discussion?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Are we doing this now because it's in the administrator's contract? Or are we doing it now because the rest of the county employees are on the same cycle?
The administrative contract is up in July, and so we got a tendency at this council, it goes from a year to a year and a half before we do anything. We're going to be out in July because we only got, I think, 1 meeting, one meeting in July. And so it's been a custom that we wait. And so I wanted to get this done so we can get this out the way and move on to something else. So that's why you see the administrator is on today, as well as it was the other day.
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Werman, I asked Mr. Werman to look into it. He did Miss Salisbury, we did Miss Salisbury, as you know, and we did the internal audit at all. They all received good scores. But these are the only two contract employees that we have.
Okay, well, first of all, I think the administrator is doing a wonderful job. I think he does check all the boxes and is doing a great job. I have always worried about our process. I don't think we really have, we don't have a market study we're going by. I don't think I have a reasonable basis for what the administrator should be making. And we never do request professional help to get that information. And at times in the past, we've gotten a little bit, but I've just never been convinced that I have enough information to make those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Swift. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I did call for a salary study, so it's not like we have not requested. And I do also support the fact that, based on we just made the motion for the administrator to receive the 6% increase.
Yeah, I think, aren't we doing a salary study now, and that's going to be coming back?
I was just saying,
Yes, sir.
you know,
Yes, sir, 'cause
that we have asked for help.
And I think they're in the process of bringing that back, but it won't come till after July, August sometime, I think it is, correct?
I just wanted to call that back to Mr.
Yes,
Swift's
sir.
attention.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Honeycutt.
So,
Right.
just to be clear, the 3% you would automatically get if you meet expectations for cost of living increase.
Yes, sir.
So essentially,
Yes, ma'am.
this is a 3% for doing an exceptional.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's not 3 plus 6.
No,
and
it's 3
6%.
plus, yes, ma'am,
Total of 6%.
6%. All right.
For exceed.
Anybody else before we move on? Ms. Salisbury, call the roll.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers? Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Motion passes 8 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, the
Mr.
second.
Chair, I would
Yes.
like to recommend that, I would like to move that we likewise give our county administrator, our county attorney, who's doing an outstanding job, who has exceeded expectations, a 6% increase.
Second.
Second by Ms. Honeycutt. Any more discussion?
Just a comment. I certainly agree. Same with the administrator. The county attorney is absolutely doing a wonderful job. I fully support her. But again, I don't really have the tools to know exactly what she should be paid.
Thank you, Mr. Swiers. Ms. Salisbury, call the roll.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass? Mr. Schwiers? Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Motion passes with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, so y'all want to take a 5-minute break before we go into public comments and then, this, because we're going to be moving kind of fast. All right? So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to go to public hearing.
Yes, sir. We've got public hearing.
Public comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we'll start our regular council meeting, so bear with us, please.
But I'm going to fight for what I'm going to fight for scratch your law, you know.
On number 4, I already told, Sass.
Sass is going to do it?
Yeah. That's the, the clerk.
Oh, yeah.
That I talked to you about, yes.
All right, so we get on that, and we're going to be moving fast, so that we're done on it, all right? Everybody got any comments?
To be lumped in.
Keep it on. All right, so we back
Yeah.
in
12th and
session.
then August.
I'm gonna ask everybody to please be seated so we can get started. We're going to start our 7:08 public hearing. I think we only have, one for the night, right?
We have three.
We got three, okay. So let's go ahead and take these other ones and then do it. What you have to do, Ms. Osborne.
Yes, sir. A public hearing shall be held by the County Council of Charleston County on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, before final approval by council of an ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1.2 million fire protection service general obligation bonds for the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District.
Anybody signed up for that one?
No, sir.
Anything from council members? Next.
Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing regarding ZLDR amendments regarding the resilience element.
Okay. Anybody signed up?
Yes, sir. We have a presentation.
Oh, you got a
and,
presentation. Okay.
comments.
Thank you.
The resilience element of the comprehensive plan was adopted by County Council March 10th of 2020. The county administrator then appointed Karen Green as the first chief resilience officer in October of that year. The resilience element calls for identifying and pursuing amendments to existing county policies and regulations to improve the county's resilience towards long-term stressors and acute disasters. This led to the creation of the Resilience Committee, which met from April 2021 through February of this year. They have made recommendations to staff about ways that the ZLDR, building and flood codes, and the stormwater manual could be revised to address resilience. Staff drafted amendments to implement these recommendations, and they were presented to the committee and also Planning Commission for feedback. All right. We were asked by the committee to look at ways to encourage parking under buildings. So staff suggested incentivizing parking under buildings by exempting those areas from maximum building height calculations, up to 1 story for multifamily dwellings and non-residential development. The parking area under the building must be at least 51% of the building footprint to qualify for that exemption. We are also proposing to add a definition for story to support that amendment. Next, the committee also recommended incentivizing the use of local, natural, and more sustainable landscaping, as well as hardscaping by developers. They wanted to see less open lawns, more rain gardens, and more pervious surfaces. So staff suggested adding a maximum impervious surface coverage area requirement and defining impervious surface area to support that. From those recommendations, the following amendments are being proposed. So in the zoning districts you can see on the slide here, parks, recreation, open space, resource management, our agricultural zoning districts, rural residential, S3, R4, and our manufactured housing subdivision and manufactured housing park zoning districts, we are proposing a maximum impervious surface coverage of 40% of the lot, and this would be for non-residential development and also for residential development on parcels that are less than 30,000 square feet in size or as allowed by the stormwater manual. And the maximum 30% building coverage would still apply to those residential properties greater than 30,000 square feet. The urban residential zoning district, we're proposing a maximum impervious surface coverage of 50% or as allowed by the stormwater manual. In the rural commercial, rural industrial, residential office, civic institutional, general office, neighborhood commercial, community commercial, and industrial zoning districts, we're proposing a maximum impervious surface coverage of 50% of the lot, also or as allowed by the stormwater manual. We are also proposing to prohibit driveways of any surface type from being located in the OCRM critical line buffers. Continuing on with those amendments, we're proposing amendments to the overlay districts as needed to correspond with the change from building coverage to impervious surface coverage. We are also proposing to require that applications for variances from the maximum impervious surface coverage requirements include documentation showing how the proposed increase in impervious surface coverage beyond the maximum allowed will be mitigated, and provide documentation that the proposed mitigation has been reviewed by the Stormwater Division of Charleston County Public Works Department. We're proposing including the same requirement for planned developments that request increases in maximum impervious surface coverage beyond what would be allowed in the current base zoning. All right. Continuing on, we are also proposing to require zoning permits applications to show impervious surface coverage on their site plans. Also allowing increases in impervious surface coverage for parcels involved in shared access agreements. We are also proposing to define both impervious and pervious surface coverage as part of this process and clarify the differences between pavement and impervious surface as needed as they're used throughout the ZLDR.
All right. To provide a greater flexibility, zoning and planning staff is suggesting amending the definition of building height in the ZLDR to reference the design flood elevation rather than the base flood elevation. So design flood elevation includes base flood elevation plus any freeboard requirements. So by setting the building height to reflect the design flood elevation, the current required 2-foot freeboard would no longer count towards the maximum building height calculations. All right. Planning Commission recommended approval of these amendments at their May 9th meeting. And at that Planning Commission meeting, we did have one citizen speak in favor of the proposed amendments. Other than that, we have not received any public input regarding these amendments. And this meeting was noticed as required. Thank you.
Any questions from council members? All right, anybody signed up to speak?
Mr. Chair, certainly I don't want to hold it up, but I wanted to applaud the efforts. I think this is a great step in the right direction. And to Karen Green and to the committee and to the commission, great job.
All right, Mr. Moody?
Mr. Chairman, Reverend Middleton, I disagree. I didn't see anything in here that addresses affordable housing. We just set aside $20 million for affordable housing. The regulations that I see will astronomically drive up the price of projects. That has not been considered. There's no economic development angle that's been considered that I can see here. This will crush prices to develop, near as I can tell. I have not gotten into it very deeply, but what I've seen here is not good. Thank you.
Resiliency and sustainability, certainly as we look toward the future, even as it relates to those who are those that we would consider to be poor or under a certain socioeconomic background or limit, would need housing and or structures and or dwellings that meet these kind of specifications. When you look at the floodplains, and they're being wiped out right now. And so having, these elevations and increasing the base plane so that, those kind of dwellings can be considered, that increases their ability to live in places that are flood zones. And so I definitely disagree, because I think that all of the specifications that have been at least contemplated in these improvements move at least the quality of housing to the next level for sustainable and resilient futures.
I may not disagree with you, but good luck finding somebody to build it for an affordable housing price. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Honeycutt?
I just have a couple technical questions. So impervious surface doesn't mean I understand that, I'm trying not to get too technical, but paving concrete, water can't go through it. It's a problem from a watershed standpoint. But that's not going to limit the ability, for instance, to create parking, because you can create parking with impervious, gravel, whatever.
That's correct.
Okay, so help me understand the freeboard issue, because the very first one said we're raising the first height is not going to, the first floor story will not count toward the overall height cap.
Right. Well, hopefully this diagram will help describe this. So you have the grade, the ground level. You have BFE, base flood elevation, that's set by FEMA. And currently in the ordinance, there's a 2-foot freeboard. Right now, as of today, a building height is measured from that base flood elevation. So from the get-go, a homeowner or builder loses 2 feet off of that building height, because the freeboard is included in that height measurement. We want to go to this design flood elevation so that so the homeowner is getting the full height. That's
but so I understand this, that doesn't change the construction means and methods. That simply allows for more space, and you can actually go vertical a little bit more. If you're building a multi-family unit, it could actually go several feet higher.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is there, and maybe you can speak to this, maybe not, but what is the cost difference in an impervious versus pervious surface? It would seem to me that they're probably relatively close. No?
It depends on the material and the method that's used for the impervious. Obviously, if it's gravel, that would be less expensive than asphalt or concrete. There is pervious asphalt and there's pervious concrete that's available. I don't know the exact pricing of that, but I'm going to assume that's going to be more than just your basic asphalt and concrete.
And then my last question is, with respect to slab-on-grade housing, obviously, that's not slab-on-grade, but does this affect that construction? Do these changes affect the ability in non-flood zones to build slab-on-grade?
I might let the building, okay, no.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? You want to say something, Mr. Small?
And that is our current ordinance.
Okay. All right, who signed up to speak? And how many we had signed up for this?
We have Jason Crawley and Anthony Bryant for this one.
All right, gentlemen, come right to this mic here. We're gonna give you 2 minutes, state your name and address. And she's gonna go, when you hear that beep, that's it.
Thank you, Chairman Pryor, members of council. My name is Jason Crowley, Director of Communities and Transportation for the Coastal Conservation League. It's late, so I'll be quick, and Councilman Middleton said most of my comments already, but this has been a very methodical and collaborative process since the resilience element was created a few years ago, and the resilience committee was put together of representatives from the conservation community, citizens, the home builders, the realtors, the real estate committee, a little bit of everyone has been brought in to this process to look through everything. I mean, it is very technical and is not super sexy, but it is good stuff that will lead collectively to a more resilient and sustainable future. And will be through incremental approaches. And we've been very pleased with the process that the county has been making. And we look forward to seeing you all approve these amendments moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony G. Bryant, according to the appropriate authorities, 2123 Cortland Avenue, Charles, South Carolina 29403. I will submit this for the record at the appropriate time. In 2013, I made public comment at the Citadel regarding hurricane impacts. 2005, before Hurricane Trina took place, before there were even FEMA maps. So the FEMA maps have just been updated. The continuum of care, which you are, under HUD guidelines, 30% of the median income at that time. So you've already got the data already in place to be able to come to some conclusion in terms of who has coverage, who doesn't have coverage, how you can mitigate those with no coverage, based on the fact that the median income is like $400,000 to purchase a house. That's the median income, that's $300,000. So have an existing homeowner that owns their house have to sell their property and re-enter the market again. So there's a lot of dynamics to this that you need to consider in terms of this $20 million, as Mr. Moody was saying, because the numbers won't work with the inflation at about 9 to 10% going up every quarter, two quarters of recession. So all these dynamics are there for you to deal with on the state level, the Department of Commerce and other agencies that you work with to be able to really come up with a real plan to deal with this issue.
Thank you, sir. All right, this matter will come before us on July the 7th, I believe, at our Planning and Public Works Committee?
Yes, sir.
July 7th, okay. All right, the next public hearing.
Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing regarding non-resilience ZLDR amendments.
We just said,
No, this is for non.
oh, this, oh. What the hell, ZDR, ZLDR, okay.
As stated, these are some additional amendments non-related to resilience for the ZLDR. So per the October 2021 ZLDR amendments, the ordinance does not currently allow for freshwater wetlands to be included in density or lot area calculations. And the submittal of a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approved jurisdictional determination for subdivision, site plan review, and other permit applications is currently necessary to determine if this requirement is met. Per an April 6, 2022 dated letter from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Charleston District Regulatory Division will no longer prioritize wetland delineation requests that are not associated with an Army Corps permit application. So they actually are recommending allowing wetland delineations to be prepared by environmental consultants that utilize the 1987 Army Corps of Engineers Wetland Delineation Manual and the appropriate regional supplement for wetland delineation, instead of relying on jurisdictional determinations when those requests are not associated with an Army Corps permit application. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the sections of the ZLDR that will need to be updated as a result of this procedural change. Planning Commission recommended approval of these changes to the wetland delineation requirements with the additional language that you can see on the slide here, requiring review and approval by the Charleston County Public Works Department Stormwater Division. In section 9.2.4, required tree protection of the ZLDR, staff proposes reducing the tree barricade radii distance requirements from 1.5 feet times the diameter breast height of the tree to 1 foot times the diameter breast height of the tree. And this is being proposed to reflect a more realistic root protection zone for trees. Planning Commission recommended approval of these tree protection amendments. In section 9.8.6, billboards, we're hoping to provide clarification that the minimum distance between billboards and other on-premises signs will apply only to freestanding signs and not wall signs. Planning Commission recommended approval of these billboard amendments. In section 4.24.4, reductions of OCRM critical line setbacks and buffers, the text shown in red on this slide is proposed new language. And the proposed amendment authorizes the zoning and planning director to modify the OCRM critical line setbacks and buffers with DHEC's approval within public or private rights-of-way and drainage easements. Additionally, the new language states that the zoning and planning director shall be authorized to waive or modify the existing OCRM critical line setback and buffer requirements when there's an alteration that results in an overall expansion of the OCRM critical line into existing highland and freshwater wetland areas for the creation of a mitigation bank, if the conditions listed on the slide here under 1 through 3 are met. Planning Commission recommended disapproval of these amendments to the reductions of the OCRM critical line setbacks and buffers. In section 9.2.1 of the Tree Protection and Preservation article, the following additional language is being proposed. Removal of trees associated with relocating the OCRM critical line pursuant to section 4.24.4C, except grand tree removal shall be mitigated inch per inch pursuant to section 9.2.6 of this ordinance. Planning Commission recommended disapproval of these amendments to the Tree Protection and Preservation section. This slide shows the proposed definition for mitigation bank, which reads, a site or suite of sites where aquatic resources, for example, wetlands, streams, or riparian areas, are restored, established, enhanced, and or preserved for the purpose of providing compensatory mitigation for impacts authorized by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits. This definition is limited to those sites which are governed by a mitigation banking instrument approved by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Planning Commission recommended approval of this amendment to the definition section. We have received 4 letters in support, along with 4 letters in opposition to the proposed mitigation bank amendments. We also received 1 letter in support of the required tree protection amendments. And this meeting was noticed as required.
Okay, you done? Okay. Council members, if you got something right quick, otherwise when the public comes up, I'm gonna give them their 2 minutes without interruption. So anybody from council want to weigh in right quick? All right, thank you, ma'am. Would you please call the speakers up?
We have 11, Betsy LaForce, and then Mary Shahid.
All right, so you come up, you state your name and your address. We're going to give you up to 2 minutes. And please, when you hear the dinger, that's it.
Good evening. I'm Betsy LaForce with the Coastal Conservation League at 131 Spring Street in Charleston. We are opposed to the proposed changes to the ZLDR Section 4.24.4, reductions of OCRM critical line setbacks and buffers, and Section 9.2.1, general tree protection and preservation, Item E. As we heard, the Planning Commission voted 5-1 against the proposal at their recent May 9th meeting. And prior to that, in April, the Charleston County Board of Zoning Appeals voted to deny 2 variance requests related to a mitigation bank proposal, one for the removal of a grand live oak and the other for encroachment into 1.3 acres of protected OCRM critical line buffer. The request before you tonight is essentially to approve a rewrite of our county zoning regulations so that alterations to the county's jurisdictional wetland buffers for the creation of mitigation banks that meet certain criteria could be approved at the staff level, thereby eliminating the public notification and review process. The OCRM critical line is a public resource and therefore a matter of public concern, meaning the public needs the ability to weigh in on and be notified of any proposed changes. These regulations represent essential environmental protections that should under no circumstance be left up to staff only to review. We applaud the county BZA members who worked together with the help of valuable information received during public input at the May meeting to deny the variance request, finding that they did not in fact prove a hardship. The BZA meeting demonstrated that the current process works, and as we will hear tonight, there is strong public sentiment to maintain that system of checks and balances that promotes transparency and public engagement. Therefore, we urge County Council to reject the zoning changes and instead strive to earn and maintain the public's trust in the system and to ensure that it functions the way it's supposed to now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Barry Shahid, Ross Nelson, Pam Skinner.
So my name is Mary Shahid. I'm an attorney. I represent the mitigation banking industry. I was also the attorney for the mitigation bank that encountered some problems in obtaining a BZA variance. The mitigation bank would have resulted in the creation of 60 acres of tidal salt marsh and was just requiring a variance into the critical area. And that opportunity was lost when the BZA denied the variance. I want to speak about the benefits of mitigation banks. Mitigation banks restore, enhance, and preserve critical areas. Mitigation banks create critical areas. Mitigation banks, particularly tidal mitigation banks, go after areas where there's impoundments or blockage to tidal flow, things that are now illegal in the eyes of the EPA and under the Clean Water Act. You can no longer get permits to block or impound tidal wetlands. Mitigation banks then remove those impoundments and allow tidal flow to reconnect and allow the creation of new salt marsh areas. These are a very beneficial thing. The Point Farm Mitigation Bank was recently in front of the DHEC board where the same people challenging the effort to get a variance also challenged the DHEC permit. The DHEC board found multiple public benefits associated with mitigation banks. Increase in public access, increase in public tidal salt marsh, and that found that mitigation banks were very beneficial entities. And I would ask that this council come to those same conclusions when reviewing these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Ross Nelson, Pam Skinner, Josh Dix.
Good evening. My name is Ross Nelson. I'm with American Mitigation Company. My address is at 3903 Willow Point Lane, Johns Island, South Carolina. First, I want to thank you for hearing this proposed amendment. I've submitted some additional information that I would like for you to consider as you review some of the public comments. I won't get into those because I could stand here for hours and speak about mitigation banking. I've spent an entire career doing permittee responsible mitigation projects, mitigation bank projects, and this is the first time I've had to stand in front of a county council and discuss a proposed amendment to a zoning ordinance in order to proceed with a wetland restoration project. The irony here is that we sit arguing for an amendment to an ordinance that's designed to protect uplands or designed to regulate development in a situation where we're trying to do the exact opposite. We're actually trying to restore a site to what it was when it was created initially. We are taking impoundments back to to fully functioning salt marsh areas. This is an important process that is important to the permitting of critical infrastructure projects in Charleston County. And without approval of this ordinance, Charleston County will put itself in a position where they are unable to provide restoration to necessary impacts to salt marsh to proceed with many critical infrastructure projects in Charleston County. And that includes roadway projects. It also includes drainage improvement projects and a whole host of other things that limit the county's ability to provide mitigation to offset those impacts. I would hope the county supports this amendment, and I'm here in support of it as well. Thank you.
Next.
Pam Skinner, Josh Dix, Caroline Pageant.
My name is Pam Skinner, Fairview Plantation Road on Wadmalaw Island, and I would like to first start off by saying the last comment that approving this amendment does not stop other mitigation banks that are properly would be proper for the location they're in. So I just want to get that aside. And the other thing I wanted to mention that during the Planning Commission, which approved this 5-1, we heard from one of the Planning Commission members after they heard this very lengthy presentation by the applicants and after they had heard all of the comments from, as we're called, the detractors, that the Planning Commission stated that the proposal sounded dubious, questionable, non-professional, expedient, and sketchy. He said he was hoping to come up with one adjective, but he's like, could actually come up with 5 to describe this amendment. And I don't mean to get personal here, but the BZA appointee owns and works for the American Mitigation Company. So I find that a little bit of the sketchy part. The second one is the Planning Commission opposed this recommended disapproval by a 5-1 vote. And there was one person that's very tied to the reason for this mitigation bank that was in support of it. And the planning director, this is being left in the planning director's hands to approve without any outside of the public view, and that is not right. And the planning director works for y'all, for the council. His job or her job depends on this council. So I think that I would say in just a few brief words that at best, this proposed amendment is a conflict of interest for everyone, and at worst, it's an abuse of power because of the way this whole thing was prompted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Josh Dix, Caroline Pageant, Louise Maybank.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor, members of council. We have a few things that we'd like to bring up. First being the freshwater wetland delineation. This is something that the Army Corps has brought to our attention of not only are they not willing to really go down this road very further, this is also something that we've talked to the planning department and the zoning. It's not something the county is prepared to take on either. So unless we're willing to appropriate resources and figure out a system for the county to approve these freshwater delineations, we're not really in support at this point of this conversation. The other part is the mitigation bank that's been discussed at some length here. Charleston does not have a mitigation bank in its resources. If we want to look at projects, whether it be road construction, future development, airport extension, we have to go to the northern part of the state, Georgia, in order to buy these mitigation credits. The fact that we cannot buy credits in our own backyard is frankly disgraceful. At a time when we talk about resiliency and taking care of the environment, the fact that we can't do it in our own area is irresponsible. So we advocate for mitigation banks. We figure they're a good use of land resources. It's a way to protect the environment in our own neighborhood, and it is a responsible way to go forward as we continue to grow. Growth is happening whether we like it or not. The best way we can do it is in a responsible fashion. Thank you for listening to us, and look forward to any other comments or questions you may have. Appreciate it.
Next.
Caroline Pageant, Louise Maybank, Melinda Kelly.
Hi, my name is Caroline Paget, and my address is 6850 Point Farm Road, Wadmalaw, South Carolina. And I'm not going to go into too much of what was just discussed. I'm just going to speak more to the heart of it and the conflict of interest. And if we can zone out on this issue to look at where is the integrity line, where is the way forward that people, many people who didn't even come tonight are in opposition of this. And my question is, if everyone can have a moment when you're in discussion to ask why. Why is this one project getting the undue or not getting the due process that everything else does? There's a conflict of interest. I know that Mr. Nelson said the irony of this is that it's for protection of the environment, but his employee, he works for the same people that are in favor for that. If this was anywhere else, that would be seen as a conflict of interest. And I was at the meeting that in April that denied the amendment to go through. And, you know, when it comes down to it, I just hope that everyone can really ask themselves, you know, what is the heart of this and why? Like, why do X, Y, and Z want this? Why has it happened to now? Why was it even brought up a few months ago? And really choose the path of integrity and heart. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Louise Maybank, David Quick, Melinda Kelly.
Louise Maybank, 2029 Burger Hill Road, Wadmalaw Island. I'm here to speak against this. This particular issue is not for or against the mitigation bank. It's the particular problem on Point Farm. And why the zoning matter is before you tonight, the LZR amendment, is because it came out of a hearing where the BZA twice unanimously turned something down. And as a result of that, Wadmalaw people were pleased, others were not pleased, and the issue that's before you tonight is, as someone had previously mentioned in colloquial terms, it's a workaround for our project on the island. It's not the big picture, it's for Wadmalaw Island. And it's very important that you all understand that the wonderful words that you heard about saving all this marshland is relative to it's related to thousands of acres of marshland that is pristine, that is adjacent to the issue at hand. It's not some wonderful salvation of something that doesn't exist down there. It is a very small issue, and it's something that I think is unfortunate, that you take the voice of the people out of the debate and hand it over to a small group and to one man and a person in particular to make a decision about something that is so great and impacts so many people over such a large way. Because the final bit here is a tiny little bit of marsh in an expanse of thousands of acres of pristine marsh. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
David Quick, Melinda Kelly, William Wilson.
My name is David Quick. I live at 1502 Village Square in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I'll turn this up. I usually don't have to lift these up. Happy solstice, everybody. Longest day of the year. How wonderful. Thank you for your service, spending time in here instead of outside, enjoying the low country. I too would like to speak against the amendment. I am a firm believer of checks and balances in government, and this is a perfect example of when you have BOZA and public input on these issues. That's checks and balances in government. I think everybody can agree that we need public input when possible. I think it's really interesting that the supporters of this amendment are trying to make it to be about whether we're for or against mitigation banks. Of course, we're for mitigation banks, but we need to, with climate change coming, we need to kind of look at these things in terms of that. And we have wonderful freshwater wetlands there right now that play host to wood storks and a lot of other animals that really need freshwater wetlands. And the fact of the matter is, we don't need to be spending money to create salt marsh when eventually with sea level rise, that's going to turn into salt marsh anyway, probably within 30 or 40 years with a lot of the freshwater wetlands. So please keep it as is. Your planning commission has said the same. We need public input. We need BOZA. We don't need folks making these decisions without any public insight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Melinda Kelly, William Wilson, Anthony Bryant.
Good evening. I'm Melinda Kelly, 2124 Allendale Plantation Road on Wadmalaw, here for the Land Planning Committee on Wadmalaw. 4.24.4 is what I'm here to speak against. The amendments, I feel that it does take away the public's right to come and talk to the BZA. It's a vital public resource, these buffers. They're very important. Even DHEC, NOAA, and the Sea Grant wrote a booklet to give to every city and county stressing the importance of creating these buffers for cities and counties in their jurisdiction. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was reminded of it today when I looked at it. Taking away the ability to speak about it, I think, is not a good idea. And I also feel that it is a little strange that y'all would be looking at this when you've got the contract with them. There's only one mitigation bank that's ever been thought of in this county, and it's theirs, the American Mitigation Bank in Point Farm. And I just feel that it's, other people have said it, people on our land planning committee have said it, that it's a conflict of interest. So we would just ask that you leave it the way it is so that people can go to the BZA. I know they were disappointed that the BZA denied it, but that's the process, and that's due process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
William Wilson, Senior, Anthony Bryant.
William Wilson, 2517 Charter Oaks Drive, Mount Pleasant. The only question that I have is, when you're going to take the trees and go from a 1.5 down to a 1 ratio, well, how does that affect those trees that are so close to the wetlands that require fresh water for them to exist because they're close to salt water and their root structure? To me, now I'm not an arborist, but I've seen how the root structures near us have to be so much larger in order for them to survive. I just would like to ask the question, is there enough scientific data based on changing the 1.5 to the 1 ratio? That's all I ask. And if there is, then I have no point. But I would like to say that uplands oak trees versus wetlands oak trees may go by a different kind of reason to have water, and how does that affect it? So I'd like to see that. I would also just like to second that I'm very much in favor of having public opinion and public input into some various things like that. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Brian,
Is this the last speaker?
for this one.
We got another one?
That's all right. Oh, we have.
I'm a BZA member. Joel is one of the best. Zoning is police power. Who's going to administer and enforce it? So the question becomes, who's going to administer and enforce it? SEDHEC is going through a change right now. They're going to be split up. So how can you, now also I spoke to the sheriff in the back, so that's not y'all concern. I'm going to give this up on the name, Anthony G. Bryant, so sheriff will get it and she'll get whoever she to get it to. But this issue, I filed a complaint under the Administrative Procedure Act of 1946, which is notice, procedure, effective date. But the most expensive is the judicial review. So basically, when people are poor, $20 million support, they won't be able to file a complaint at all. So whatever is done through land use, meaning you, will be the only recourse they will have. Now, if you look on Pacer, you see Anthony G. Bryant versus the Army Corps of Engineers against DHEC in protest because people don't have the resources to file suit to be mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so now we move in. This matter will come back before us on July
7th.
7th at our Planning and Public Works Committee. We now move to public comments. How many do we have signed up?
9.
All right, we ask that you state your name and address, and we give you up to 2 minutes. First person, please.
Kiva Sanders, Pearl Askew, Hugh Murphy.
That order. Who's the first person?
Kiva Sanders. All right, Pearl Askew.
Come on up, Ms. Askew.
Good
evening to you, ma'am.
To Chair and Vice Chair, entire county council members, I just here again today to say thank you for supporting our efforts with the Historical Preservation District. And I give a shout out definitely to staff that did an awesome job. The young lady, Miss Nikki Grimble, is no longer with county, but she was totally, absolutely supportive in our efforts. And we also say thank you to the Historical Preservation Commission. That said, as we are moving forward in the 10-mile community, we are engaging and embarking on working with Charleston County Public Works in reference to drainage, with construction and trees and whatnot being removed, with tons of topsoil coming in. We are going to have problems with the other residents residing there. We don't want to become detention ponds, so we're working with them. I'm sorry. I've got a frog in my throat, along with South Carolina Department of Transportation and the town of Mount Pleasant, because they're there with the Bees Landing subdivision. So we want to work on drainage. Those pipes that was there since I was a child, they cannot handle the flow of the water and where it needs to go. We have to look and find out how we are going to get that water where it needs to go so we can protect the settlement community and those residents that remains. That said, we are also working with our senator from the district, Senator Goldfinch, along with Senator Sandy Seen, to help us try to get some funds to make sure that the developers work together with the community to actually get our drainage project done. I said thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
Hugh Murphy, Reverend Gadsden, Carla Pinckney.
Hello, my name is Hugh Murphy, and I live at 2548 Charter Oaks Drive in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And I'm here against the changing the ordinance. I worked for a developer for 30 years and did commercial projects in about 12 different states. And we hired different delineations and wetlands throughout the United States. And it's good to have those people, but it's also good to have them to have to provide data to experts in their field, not someone that is in a planning commission or planning director role. Not that he may not be qualified, but I think that those people can talk differently. And I know that pressure can be put on people who go out and do delineations, because I have done it. So we're virgin wetlands to be exchanged for wetlands that are not located anywhere. That's really not a light change in changing wetlands over. Secondly, you need public input against this, and we're definitely against the changes. It slows down progress, and I know what progress means to everyone here, and I believe in it too. But believe in it and do it within the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Reverend Gadsden, Carla Pinckney, Siam Rutledge.
Well, I am Reverend Abraham Gadsden. My address is 8254 Palmetto Road, Edisto Islands. And I come to say thank you. First, I would like to congratulate all of you for such hard and diligent and hard work. In behalf of the community of Edison, we appreciate and looking forward for help with the water system. And it's a great help because, you know, that's a big ticket item. The other is the septic tank. So we appreciate the work that we are receiving from the county council, and we want to say to you, may God continue to bless you and heaven smile upon you and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Carla Pinckney, Siam Rutledge, Becky Van Wee.
Good evening. My name is Carla Pinckney. Address is 3768 Robbie Glover Road, Allendale, South Carolina. Good evening once again. Tonight I stand here on behalf of the 10 Mile community. We are here at the third reading to request your support to approve our request to be granted the Historic Preservation District status. As we've stated at previous Charleston County Council meetings, we are a diverse community with a wealth of history that we want to pass to future generations. Like other communities that have presented prior to us and future communities that will also come before you requesting this historic district status, we would like to preserve our history, the bonds that have been formed, and the stories that have been handed down from generation to generation. Those who are here tonight in support of this request, can you please stand at this time? Thank you. Thank you to the County Council for considering our request and to your staff for your support as we have traversed this journey over the last year and a half and especially in the last few months. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Suzanne Rutledge, and I live on Hopetown in Mount Pleasant. And I want to thank you so much for allocating $20 million for housing tonight. That's a great step forward. And I know you have many things to consider, but it's a great step. And if you want to know what it looks like to need affordable housing, look right here. You can't always tell by looking, but I found it's easy. You find yourself in retirement with a single salary, and that's all it takes, really. I'm a retired teacher, and I'm living on a partial teacher's income. Partial income because I used a lot of my retirement savings to help my son and daughter go to college. So I find myself now with a low income in retirement age. I know many people in this same situation. And a lot of baby boomers are just not ready for retirement. I lived in an affordable apartment in Dallas for 5 years. I'm lucky, though. I'm here now, and I'm renting a few rooms for my friend, and I live upstairs. So, but not everybody is as lucky as I am. Not everybody has friends and family resources to support them. But I just wanted to say that the need for affordable housing is real, as you already know. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Becky Van Wee, and I am a member of Circular Congregational Church as well as Charleston Area Justice Ministry, or CAJM. And I am here tonight to thank you so much. I'm going to repeat what Suzanne said, being totally unprofessional but speaking from the heart. Yes! Thank you for allocating those funds. We are grateful. Suzanne's story is personal, and I thank her for sharing that. And it's also sad to listen to. None of us wants to see our senior citizens who have worked their whole lives be in a situation like Suzanne finds herself in. She was fortunate, as she said, to have the help of friends and families, but we know that not all seniors and other folks who need affordable housing have the kind of support that Suzanne has. So we're all concerned about all the folks in our community who need affordable housing. Most of my remarks are no longer relevant because of the vote you took earlier, but I did want to take a minute to thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Next.
Reverend Morrison, Anthony Bryant.
The chair and vice chair, and to all of you, the county council members, thank you so much. That's all I want to say. Not much. I want to say thank you for not forgetting about Edisto. I didn't hear that Edisto name called earlier, but we need you on Edisto. We have a lot of people there that need help with the housing and the revitalization. Please. Thank you for the fine job that you're doing. I didn't think that I would get called because not many people can read my writing. It was read tonight.
We know your face. That's why we tell you. Next. Thank you, Rev.
Last one, Mr. Bryant.
All right. Mr. Anthony G. Bryant. Like Fred G. said.
Well, you'll find out tonight I'm not that happy about being here. Okay. On South Carolina federal law dictates that motor vehicle driver's license records maintained by its SCD&V may be disclosed in certain situations. I made a public comment to State Farm Insurance lobbyists years ago regarding rates and fees at the Citadel. And on 2010, Brian Collette came by my house with fugitives, extraditions, and warrants. Now, based upon SLED, the only person that complaint could be filed through is through the solicitor's office, the attorney general, and to the sheriff, which I saw the sheriff a few minutes ago. So that means that all my public comments here in the past could be subjected to criminal discovery. I don't need a lawyer for that. I'm a political figure. I know how to handle that business. Okay, so this right here is complaint to U.S. District Court of South Carolina that I have right here that I filed. I filed the Administrative Office of U.S. Attorney's Office courts for every black man I know in Maryland, in D.C., in New York, who I went to college with. I'm from South Carolina school in Maryland. So I want you to take this information, give it to the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General, anybody else you want to give it to. But we will not. Take this, sister. You can take that. Now, you can call Mr. Tootin. I don't know what's funny about force being used on somebody, but you can call that number there. You can call Lindsey Graham. You call that number there, State Farm Insurance. You call the number, you get back with me, or send a U.S. attorney to my house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Okay, that concludes our public comments. We're now going to move into our regularly scheduled county council meeting. We are going to start with prayer from my brother Mudio down there, and then we're going to Hacks. Let's see who I'm going to pick today. Hacks. We'll just do the pledge. I'll ask Corinne to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Moody.
Just let them clear out for a minute. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for assembling this group of public service, able staff members and constituents so that we might consider that which you deem best to Charleston County. Lord, take our lips and speak through them. Take our minds and think through them. Take our hearts and set them on fire. For nothing can happen without your blessing. Amen.
Amen.
Wow.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. We're probably going to move at a fast pace, so I want to get these folks out of here. So item number 1 is the Freedom of Information Act.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to news media and persons requesting notification.
Item 2, minutes of June 7, 2022. What is the pleasure?
Approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Moody, second by Mr. Sass. Any discussion, deletion, or addition? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 3A is a resolution honoring Chaplain Eva Small Smith. What is the pleasure?
To approve.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. I'm going to ask Ms. Smith to come up. Chaplain Smith, would you come up and bring whoever you want up along with you? So we can give you this resolution. Reverend Milton, I'm gonna ask you to get this down here with her. Come on through. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I've known this young lady for years and years and years. Our family kind of grew up together, and I call her young because she never stops going. She's always got a word of prayer for you, and she's just such a kind individual. I've known for many, many years, so I thought it kind of not robbery to recognize her because she's been toiling out there for a long time. And she does a great job over at the detention center. And I want you to know we appreciate you and hope that, God continues to bless you and have a smile upon you. Yes, ma'am. All right, Ms. Salisbury?
A resolution of Charleston County Council honoring Chaplain Eva Smalls Smith. Whereas Charleston County Council recognizes that the foundation of our community is grounded in those who give of themselves selflessly to help others, and from time to time we have the privilege of recognizing an individual who exemplifies such a commitment. And whereas Eva Smalls Smith was born on June 12, 1937 in Charleston, South Carolina, graduated from Bonds Wilson High School, received her master's degree from North Carolina School of Theology, and Doctor of Divinity degree from the Christian Education Theological Seminary. And whereas Eva Smalls Smith married Roger Smith, and together they traveled to many states and countries, they have 3 children, 8 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. And whereas Eva Smalls Smith is the pastor of El Shaddai Trumpet Tower Networking Ministry, and whereas Eva Smalls Smith began ministering at the Sheriff Al Cannon Detention Center approximately 25 years ago, beginning first as a volunteer and then becoming a full-time employee in 2010. Her responsibilities include ministering all denominations to residents of the detention center, 465 staff members, and 50 chaplain aides, arranging and providing worship services in the detention center, recruiting and arranging training and volunteers, requesting donations from churches and organizations on behalf of the detention center, providing death and serious illness notifications, and being available at all times for any situations requiring her assistance. And whereas Eva Smalls Smith is a member of the Union Heights Council Board, Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, UNCC Council Committees, Homeless Coalition Program, and Christian International Apostolic Network, and has been twice awarded the Carol B. Gordon Award, which is given to a Charleston County Sheriff's Office employee who puts others first and exemplifies high standards personally and professionally, as well as the Charleston County Sheriff's Office Civilian of the Quarter 4 times. Now therefore be it resolved by Charleston County Council that Chaplain Eva Smalls Smith be commended for outstanding and professional service to her community, and that the genuine appreciation of Charleston County Council be extended to her on behalf of all citizens of this county. Charleston County Council, Teddy E. Pryor Sr., June 21st, 2022.
I'm gonna let you have a few words, and then anything you'd like to say? I know you're speechless, but that's all right. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I do like to say thank the board, the council board, the chair, our department, which is our sheriff. And I'd like to give all the glory and all the credit to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ that led me in this direction and helped me to condescend myself to lift others up. And I just want to bless this council board, the sheriff department, and our city of North Charleston. And thank you for standing with me, and thank you for recognizing me. Recognize the work of God. Amen.
Amen.
I want to share this supervisor here, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Baxter, and our chef was here. She must have had a call.
Yeah, she must have to leave. I saw her in the back.
Yes, she was very supportive.
Yes.
And thank you all so very much.
You're quite welcome.
I just made 85 for now.
Oh, 58.
On the 12.
Yeah, that's the best. She's still going on.
Yes.
And one thing I'll say, she's a humble person. I never knew you had a a doctor behind your name, but, you know, most people, they want you to call them doctor this, doctor that, but you just do the work and don't worry about the title. And that's so amazing. I never knew that. That's so amazing. So thank you so much for your service and continue to keep praying for us, all right?
I'd like to bless each and every one of you. You all are doing the work of God when you're working with God's people. Be strong in his grace.
Thank you. Thank you. She's still driving too, at 85. She's still driving. That's a blessing by itself right there. That's right. Item 4 is third reading. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, Ms. Salisbury, you take them A through H.
Yes, sir. An ordinance rezoning the real property located at 3347 Ladson Road, parcel identification number 3900. Hang on. Mr. Darby needs to fill that out. 3900000076 from the Community Commercial CC zoning district to the General Office OG zoning district. This is the school district.
Oh, yes, thank you so very much.
Mr. Darby's abstaining.
Abstain, yes.
Ms. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton? Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
All right.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 abstention.
Mr. Darby, for the record, stated in the mic why you abstaining, sir. So
Because of my association with Charleston County School District.
all right, thank you, sir. Next.
An ordinance amending the Kiowa River Plan Development Zoning District, PD 143B of the Kiowa River Development Agreement, Johns Island, South Carolina, by and among Kiowa River Investment LLC and Charleston County, South Carolina. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton? Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, please forgive me.
Yes, sir.
4B?
Yes, sir.
That was a nay for me.
Okay.
How you gonna go get your cousin like that?
Don't play.
Huh? You go get your cousin like that? They'll get it later, Mr. Darby.
Yes, sir. They'll get it
Four-
later.
4C, go ahead.
An ordinance amending the Kiowa River Development Agreement, Johns Island, South Carolina, by and among Kiowa River Investment LLC and Charleston County, South Carolina. Mr. Darby? Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass? Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 7 ayes and 2 nays.
All right, 4D, Tan Mile Historic District.
An ordinance designating the 10-mile community located in East Cooper area of unincorporated Charleston County as a historic district on the Charleston County Historic Designation List with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
Before taking my vote, I would like to commend the 10-mile community and congratulate them specifically in this historic moment, and I definitely vote aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Let me think about that. Aye.
Ordinance
Good to
passes
see you.
third
Good
reading
to
with
see you.
9 ayes.
All right. Y'all, safe travels back. Thank y'all so much. 4E.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I have a budget amendment resulting from an increase in the state budget for the salary supplement for elected officials. I move that the FY23 general fund budget be amended as follows. Increase revenues by $40,275. Increase expenditures for the clerk of court, probate court, and sheriff by $13,425 each.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, all opposed, ayes have it. Now you can read the ordinance.
Yes, sir. An ordinance providing for the levy of taxes for corporate purposes of Charleston County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, hereinafter referred to as fiscal year 2023, making appropriations from the general fund and other funds of Charleston County for such purposes, and further providing for the levy of taxes for corporate purposes of Charleston County, including the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College for fiscal year 2023, providing for appropriations from such special funds created for the purposes of the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District, East Cooper Fire District, Northern Charleston County Fire District, West St. Andrews Fire District, and Trident Technical College in order to supply the necessary functions of the units, providing for budget control of the appropriations by the Charleston County Council and the County Administrator, making provisions for the fiscal affairs of Charleston County, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $25 million for Charleston County and up to $400,000 for the Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 9 ayes.
4F is solid waste recycling and disposal.
An ordinance relating to the imposition of the annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees for the disposition of solid waste and recycling, providing for classifications of real property subject to annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees, and establishing the amount of the annual solid waste recycling and disposal fees. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 9 ayes.
Item 4G.
Do you want the pins tonight?
You stop right?
That one's not ready too, yes, sir. It's the end of the fiscal year, so. Okay, an ordinance approving the budget for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, directing the auditor of Charleston County to levy the necessary millage and the treasurer to collect taxes for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, the Cooper River Park and Playground Commission, the North Charleston District, the St. Andrews Parish Parks and Playground Commission, the St. John's Fire District, and the St. Paul's Fire District, and providing for the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount up to $3 million for the Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission, up to $1,100,000 for the St. Andrews Parks and Playground Commission, and up to $1,500,000 for the St. John's Fire District. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass? Aye. Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 9 ayes.
All right, 4H.
An ordinance to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,200,000 fire protection service general obligation bonds, Allendale-McClellanville Consolidated Fire Protection District of Charleston County, South Carolina, including a competitive bank loan procurement process to prescribe for the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended, to provide for the payment thereof, to provide for the issuance of the general obligation bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds and other matters relating thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Middleton? Aye. Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Aye. Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 9 ayes.
Before I go to item number 5, I saw Mr. Bennett's going to walk out the door. But I want to congratulate him. He's retiring effective July 1, but he's still going to stay around for a while with PRC to help them. I think each one of you should have got a letter in the mail. I just want to thank you for your continued service. I mean, you served real well as number 2, and then you elevated yourself to number 1. And I know you're going to leave us in good hands, but I want to say, David, thank you personally, because you come from a long ways. You know, and you come from a long ways, and you mean a lot to have somebody like you after him that's going to leave. But don't go too far, because we will find something for you to do in this county, because I got a board I want to put you on a commission, all right? Thank you so much for your service. All right, item number 5, second reading, 5A.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax arrangement by and among a company known for the time being as Project Pac 1, a company known for the time being as Project Pac 1 Developer, and Charleston County, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies, and providing for a payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for special source revenue and or infrastructure improvement credits, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement for the establishment of a multi-county industrial business park and other matters relating thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, next item is 5B, EMS, Fianas.
An ordinance to amend that portion of the Charleston County Code of Ordinances, Section 2-137, pertaining to fees in the Emergency Medical Service Department, and to add a provision for relief from debt for those patients experiencing financial hardship. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers? Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 9 ayes.
5C, curbside collections and solid
An
waste.
ordinance amending ordinance number 2008, authorizing an exclusive franchise for the collection of solid waste from households in unincorporated areas of Charleston County and other matters related thereto. Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Mr. Schwiers?
Aye.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 9 ayes.
Okay, we now move to item 6A.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. 6G.
6A through 6G, move to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Might we, Reverend Middleton, might we do 6A through 6F?
F,
I
I'm
need to
sorry.
abstain on G.
I remember that, yes, sir.
6A through 6F, all right. Who seconded it?
Likewise.
You seconded it? All right.
I did, and I agree.
Okay, okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed, ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, 6G, I would like to move to approve.
There, second. Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Two abstentions.
Two abstentions,
Mr. Moody
yes,
and Ms. Honeycutt, they originally stated last week at the conflict, so they're just gonna sign this, and that's fine. All right, item 7, A through H, recommendation of the, from the Finance Committee. What is the pleasure?
We need an update on 7B.
B.
You were moving that off the agenda.
Oh, yeah,
7B.
7B is being removed until we can get some further information from PRC, and this will be on our,
August 23rd.
August 23rd, meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
move-
sir.
Move to approve 7A, C, D, E, F, G, H.
All right, a second by
It's
Ms.
just
Johnson.
7A.
Okay, take your time, that's all right.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Might I request we separate out 7F? I would not, I don't want to vote against all of these. I would, but
Yes, sir. A,
Right now, all in favor of 7F signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? One nay.
Chairman?
Two nays.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm an aye, and for the record, I'd like to state that I was very concerned about about the plan not being completed. But I do think that the issue itself is so important that I need to vote for it. So I am going to change my vote and vote for it in this vote.
Yes, sir. County.
And I just want to be part of making it work.
Thank you, Mr. Sass, and I think with our staff working along with everybody and bringing things back, I think we all will be proud and make something happen.
So,
All right, so now, Reverend Middleton, you want to go from 7A.
A, C, D, E, G, H.
All right,
second.
okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Swales, you want to, the last one, you want to go no, are you good with that? That's it.
Oh, yeah, I'll vote nay on that one, I'm sorry.
Mr. Swales is a nay on 7H. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, now we're going to council comments. Reverend Middleton.
Much, Mr. Chair. We've been here long enough tonight. I would just like to celebrate and thank just God for the work of this council. Certainly, we don't agree on everything, but vigorous debate, healthy discussion, definitely an exchange of ideas begins to move us forward. So thank you, council.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, God.
Mr. Swales.
Amen to that.
Mr. Darby.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. To Ms. Honeycutt, Mr. Sass, I think Mr. Moody and Mr. Swears. I mentioned the word blacks and disadvantaged white in terms of my passion of helping the poor. I sincerely apologize because there's nothing racial about this council, nothing racial whatsoever. So I do apologize for that. I also apologize for trying to give the impression that you all do not care for the poor. That I was wrong for trying to insinuate that. It's just that my past experience per se. I also like to apologize that you all have a right to ask your questions. That's why you were elected to ask questions. But I don't think, I do think there's a class issue with the county. I do believe that. But all my life, I've had an affinity with the poor. And a lot of people don't understand why. And I'll be very succinct. My grandmother was born in 1887, and my parents were born in 1915. And I came along very, very, very late. And my dad died when I was 3 years old, matter of fact, on my birthday. And when you ask your mother, you know, what grade did your father go to? And she says second. I ask why, because that's as far as his school would take him. And I said, well, Mom, you know, what grade did you go to? Well, I could only go as far as 7th grade because that was the law in Berkeley County. African Americans could not go beyond the 7th grade, and she always wanted to be that teacher. And what about your grandmother, my grandmother? Well, she wasn't educated at all. And when your father dies and you see your mother, when she has to walk through ditches on old 52 to pick bottles to sell, or she takes a 5 or 6 year old only son through garbage to make ends meet, and I'm not embellishing this. And not only that, she was so prideful, not to the point of going through garbage or whatnot, but when someone gave her food stamp, I'm 10 years old, she takes me in the kitchen, tears up the food stamp in my face, and says, boy, I'll never forget it. She said, boy, you're going to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. That's my experience with the poor. So I have that affinity. So when it comes down to helping, that's what I do. That's just it. So it's not that I'm calling anybody, you know, anything racial, but just the idea I have an affinity with poor people. And that's my story. I still live in the same community. The house is abandoned right next to me. I got a trailer right on the left of me. I got trash houses behind me. Do I have resources to move out? Yes, I do. I can live in a gated community if I want to. Yes, I do. But I elect not to, because I'm not going to be on county council as a leader and call myself living elsewhere with the very people that I represent, who sometimes can't catch a bus. For me to call myself, I'm not going to do that. So again, my apologies. Never would I insinuate, because again, there's nothing racial. You have a right to ask all the questions, and also you that you do have a concern for the poor. So again, my most humble apology.
Ms. Honeycutt?
Apology accepted.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Ms. Johnson?
Oh, yes, sir. A couple of days ago, I noticed something on the building that concerns me, and that is, I saw the name of the building just being Public Service Building. And I never really paid attention that we don't have Mr. Lonnie Hamilton's name on the building. I don't know why that is. And I just wondered if we could look into that to see how we can put his name up there. It's only on the front sign, but it's not on the building. The building is not named Public Service Building. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Johnson too had called me, and I told her that was before my time. I didn't know anything about that, but I told her she could check. So, Mr. Smalls, can you and your staff check to see what we can do to have his name put on the building? Because when she called me, I got up the next morning. I said, I don't believe it. On my way to work, I drove by, and it did say, it only says Public Service Building. Now, and it could be because the sheriff was promised this building, and the name was already up there when council switched. I don't know. I wasn't there at that time. But I think she is right. If we can put his name on the building, I think it should be on the building. Okay? So look into that and see, and come back, get back to council with a price. Okay, Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank again our staff and Mr. Davis, and Ms. Durant, and everyone for the hard work y'all did to get everything done up to this point, and especially the rapid work y'all had to do. So thank y'all very much. Appreciate that, and appreciate finance and everybody else hard work to get us through that budget. Thank y'all.
Okay. Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo Mr. Sass's comments. I did want to raise an issue that I learned today, Mr. Chairman, that we have a resilience committee that has 34 members, if my count was right. This membership roster reads like a who's who of anti-growth, anti-business, people that are always suing us, advising us on what to do. I find that pretty rich. But this committee, two committee members work at the same organization together. And it was only after some begging and pleading that some real estate related people were allowed onto this committee. So I don't know who decide this committee. I mean, when we did our housing committee, gang, we got it right. We put 13 spots out there. We said we need these industries hit. Everybody's got a spot at the table. Well, anti-growth people don't deserve 80% spot at the table, in my opinion, on this thing. So, I don't know how this came to be. I would be interested to find out how this came to be. I don't have to have an answer tonight. We can talk about it later. But if you're going to be advising our planning commission who's advising us, I would like all parties in the community with a seat at the table. And that's not the case now, in my opinion. So I'll leave more of that for later, but it's kind of scary. Thank you, sir.
So, yeah, and whoever looks into it, why 34? I don't understand the huge number, number one. And number two, who appointed these people? We only got the appointment power up here. But the planning commission doesn't have the authority to appoint nobody. I mean, I think only county council has that. So can somebody legally check into that by the next time we get back here?
I'll also add, Ms. Ham, there are multiple members from the planning commission and BZA that also are serving on this committee, which I think is a problem as well.
Well, that's against our bylaws because you can't serve on
It's a mess,
two boards and commissions.
and it's not representative of this community.
But my question is, who gave them the appointment power? Because I get elected to represent the people. They can vote me in or vote me out. These folks, they make decisions that we in this body don't agree with. Nobody can vote them out. So I'd like to see, find out, who did it. And it's always been my opinion since I've been up here, any board or commission is appointed by this body. And I really think the way it should have been done is each council member get to appoint somebody from their district or whoever they want to appoint. And then like we did with the other board, the chair appoints somebody from the northern district and the southern district to serve, and then everybody has representation. So we really need to take a look at that. Matter of fact, that needs to be on our next agenda. So if we need to do something to get these appointments right, because I don't want people appointing somebody for me, and I get a phone call and say y'all appointed him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, going down to Mr. Worman.
Chairman, I would certainly echo the thanks to staff in really all departments. It was a big night, so I think we've seen a lot of great work from staff tonight, and wanted to thank all of them. And I'm excited about some of the housing proposals we've moved forward on, but long ways to go. A lot of questions to be answered, and excited to move forward on those. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. All right, Madam Esquire.
Sir, thank you, council, for all the kind comments and the most latest review process.
That's why you can, my dear.
Nothing tonight, sir.
All right, so good. I'm not gonna hold us. I just want to say thank you to this wonderful staff. We have that brought us to this budget process and is already starting to prepare us for next year's process. I mean, they always prepare bad news. They never bring anything good. So I guess that's what they're taught. Plan for the worst and then hope for the best. And I think you're doing a great job. I really appreciate it. Thank you to this council, for getting us through the budget process. It's been a long, tedious process, but each year you get involved in this, you grow even more. I've learned that, when I first came on, I had budget experience because I came from the sewer district, so I knew how to read the budget, but it's still, this budget here is a lot more complicated than most other people. And to Ms. Ham and to Mr. Tootin, thank you. You're professional. Mr. Tootin, when we came to you after your last evaluation, stepped up to the plate. I want to say thank you, sir. Okay. Ms. Ham, thank you in your role. And Ms. Salisbury, you and your staff, thank you for all you do. And after that, I'm going to say, meeting adjourned.
Cheers.